He thought he bought a wife, but on the wedding night he realized he had purchased pure terror. Dominic Varlli walked into that marriage like it was just another mafia deal. Sign the contract, take the shipping routes, claim the bride. Easy. But the second he saw Saraphina shaking like she was being led to her execution, everything changed. And the real plot twist? The most dangerous monster in this story wasn't the crime boss everyone feared. It was the father who sold his own daughter to save himself.
Dominic Varlli's empire was forged in fear, cemented with blood, and built upon deals made in darkness. He had never ceded control, not until the night his new wife recoiled from his touch. The union was meant to be a simple transaction. Secure the alliance by signing the papers and claim his prize. But Saraphina Vale was not the asset he'd bargained for. She was a lamb led to slaughter, innocent and petrified. When that truth dawned on Dominic, he stood before a soul-altering choice: seize what the contract gave him, or abandon his entire creed of power. A decision that promised to ruin them both. Stay with us to discover how their story unravels. And as we begin, let me know in the comments where this story finds you tonight. Now let the scene unfold. The Armory Club was a scar on Lower Manhattan, a wound that refused to close, all dark wood and deep red velvet. It was a den for men who brokered bargains that withered in the light. At the bar, Dominic Varlli stood, his whiskey forgotten, his gaze missing nothing. He'd held this club for 6 years, and most of its patrons for far longer. You seem coiled. Marcus Chen, Dominic's oldest friend and the man who served as his moral compass, appeared beside him. A big night, it's just a signature. Dominic's voice was flat, devoid of feeling. No different from any other deal, only this one comes with a bride. Dominic offered no reply. The marriage contract had been a 3-month war of negotiation. The Vale family held the shipping lanes through 5 key ports, routes Dominic required for unhindered expansion. Aldo Vale, bleeding capital for years, had been desperate enough to offer his own daughter as security. It was a cold, strategic move. Marcus watched him. Have you ever truly met her, this Saraphina? Once. 2 years passed at some charity function. Dominic searched his memory for a face and found only a blur. She said almost nothing, and still you're marrying her. I am securing a strategic position. The girl is merely a term of the agreement. The justification rang hollow, even to himself, yet Dominic had constructed his existence upon such cold equations. Emotion was a flaw, affection, a vulnerability to be used against you. A brutal lesson hammered into him by a father who viewed his children as assets and saw love as nothing more than a liability. The door swung open. Aldo Vale strode in, flanked by his 2 most trusted men, both of them aging and wearing their desperation plainly. Aldo looked diminished since their last meeting, his costly suit hanging from a frame, whittled down by anxiety. Varlli. Aldo's handshake was too hard, a feeble attempt to project a strength he no longer had. Everything is prepared. Saraphina is upstairs with her mother. The contract was finalized this morning. My attorneys have confirmed all is in order. The smile on Aldo's face never touched his eyes. You'll have complete control of the shipping lanes within 48 hours. And Saraphina, well, she is aware of her duty. A strange note in that final phrase gave Dominic pause, but he dismissed the feeling. Then our business is concluded, not entirely. Aldo motioned to the private elevator. The ceremony is in 20 minutes. A small affair, as we discussed. Only family and necessary witnesses. Dominic gave a short nod. He had demanded privacy. The less pageantry, the easier it was to see it for what it was. A transaction. The elevator ascended in a heavy silence. As the doors parted, Dominic entered a room he scarcely recognized. The top floor of the armory had been twisted into a grotesque imitation of romance. White blossoms, muted lighting, and chairs in stark, perfect rows. A small crowd was scattered about, their hushed talk ceasing as Dominic appeared. He saw a few familiar faces. Victor, his chief of security, by the windows. His Aunt Teresa, the only relative he kept, her gaze full of something that looked like sorrow. The others were Vales, their family and associates staring at Dominic with a poorly hidden dread. Good. Dread made men predictable. An older woman whose features marked her as Aldo's wife stepped forward. Mr. Varlli, I am Catherine Vale. We met once a long time ago. Mrs. Vale. Dominic's acknowledgement was formal, cold. Saraphina will be ready shortly. She's just... Catherine's fingers knotted together. She is nervous. This has all happened so quickly for her. We are all aware of what this is. Dominic's voice remained steady. I trust she has been briefed on what is expected. Catherine flinched. She knows her duty. That word again? Duty? It settled uncomfortably in Dominic's gut, a feeling he could not name. Marcus arrived with 2 flutes of champagne. For the blissful couple, he murmured, his voice a careful blank. He offered one to Dominic, who placed it on a table untouched. Where is the judge? Judge Morrison is present. Aldo cashed in a marker. Marcus lowered his voice. Are you certain about this? It is not too late to. It is finished. Dominic cut him off. The contract is signed. Contracts can be torn up. Dominic pivoted to face his friend. Why are you fighting this? Because I have known you for 20 years, and I have never witnessed you be this detached about anything, which is saying a great deal. Marcus held his gaze, unwavering. This isn't like moving cargo or claiming new ground. This is a life that accepted the arrangement. Did she? Marcus asked, his voice low, or did her father accept it for her? Before Dominic could form a response, the low hum of conversation changed. His head turned toward a small dressing room at the far end of the hall, and for a moment his breath seized in his chest. Saraphina Vale was standing in the doorway, and she was an apparition, nothing like the ghost in his memory. 2 years ago, she had been a whisper in a loud room, unseen, unmemorable. Now she was draped in a simple white gown that should have been graceful, but instead seemed to devour her. Her dark hair was drawn back from a face so ashen it appeared translucent in the soft glow. But it was her eyes that truly arrested him. Terror. Raw, naked terror. It wasn't him she was afraid of. She was afraid of the very air she was breathing. Her gaze darted across the room, a cornered creature hunting for an escape. Her hands crushed a small bouquet, her knuckles stark white. When Catherine moved to straighten her dress, Saraphina flinched so violently that the entire room went still. This was not a case of nerves. This was sheer panic. Dominic felt a tectonic shift inside him, a sensation he instantly tried to crush. This was the bargain. The girl understood what she had signed away. Whatever dread she now felt was her own cross to bear. Yet as Aldo grasped her arm to guide her down the makeshift aisle, Saraphina faltered. Her father's grip became a vice, yanking her onward with a brutal lack of care, and Dominic watched her bite her lip until a bead of blood appeared. She was trembling, a visible tremor that shook her entire frame. The ceremony was a hazy, indistinct dream. Judge Morrison recited words Dominic had heard at countless weddings, lending a false legitimacy to this charade. Dominic gave his responses when prompted, his voice a monotone. When the judge faced Seraphina, asking if she took Dominic to be her husband, A silence stretched into an eternity. Her voice broke. She tried once more. I do. It was the sound of utter defeat. The judge declared them married. He was expected to kiss her now. Tradition insisted. But as he leaned toward her, Saraphina wrenched her head aside so his lips barely brushed her cheek. Her body was as rigid as stone. A sparse, obligatory applause rippled through the room. Aldo looked triumphant. Catherine looked broken. Marcus looked like he was biting back words he knew he couldn't say. And Saraphina. She looked as if she might simply disintegrate. The reception was mercifully short. Dominic had forbidden dancing, cake, and any other wedding theatrics. What remained was an hour of stilted talk and untouched champagne, while Seraphina was a statue in a chair by the wall, a lone island no one dared approach. He studied her from the other side of the room. She hadn't stirred in 20 minutes, nor spoken to a single person. Her mother had made one attempt, whispering something that caused Seraphina's eyes to brim with tears she refused to shed. "She's terrified of you." Victor appeared at his side, as silent as a shadow. "She does not know me. Perhaps that is the reason." Victor had served Dominic for 15 years, earning the right to speak plainly. "You know the whispers about you on the street? The legends. Rumors do not concern me. They should, especially when your wife looks at you as though you plan to end her life." Dominic's jaw clenched. "She will acclimate." "Will she?" Victor's question hung in the air, thick with doubt. "Or will she simply learn to suffer in silence?" Before Dominic could answer, Aldo materialized wearing a politician's grin and the glassy eyes of a drunk. "Well, Varlli, my congratulations. I am certain you will care for my daughter properly." The way he said it, as if Seraphina were a prized vehicle he'd just sold, made a cold fury uncoil in Dominic's gut. The shipping lanes transfer tomorrow. Regarding that, Aldo's smile grew wider. "I have all the paperwork ready. You'll have complete operational authority by noon. And Seraphina, well, she is delivered with her own manual." "A manual?" She was raised correctly. "She knows how to manage a residence, to host, to—" Aldo's voice fell to a conspiratorial whisper. "Tsmano, to perform her wifely obligations without a single complaint." Her mother saw to it. Dominic felt his hands clench into tight fists. "Our business is finished." Of course, of course!" Aldo slapped his shoulder with a false heartiness. "I shall leave you two. I imagine you are anxious to become better acquainted." He sauntered off, chuckling to himself, and a violent urge to smash something surged through Dominic. "Boss!" Victor's voice was a low warning. "Perhaps give her a moment. This is a great deal for anyone to—" "I know what this is." Dominic cut him off, but for the first time, he truly didn't. He anticipated an ally who knew the shadowed dance, one raised within its brutal code. Instead, he found a terrified soul who saw only the beast in his reflection. Perhaps she was right. As the reception faded, guests offered congratulations that sounded like eulogies. Marcus was the last cornering Dominic by the door. "I will say this only once, so listen." Marcus's voice was a low growl. "That girl is broken with fear. What you intend for tonight is not your affair. It is, when I've seen you make choices that leave scars." Marcus's gaze was iron. "You have the shipping lanes, you won, but do not shatter that girl simply because you hold the hammer. Even monsters like us have lines we do not cross. Leave." Marcus departed, his silence a final judgment. The great hall emptied, leaving only Dominic, Saraphina, and Victor. Victor, sensing the charged air, vanished with a mumble about perimeter defenses. A heavy silence descended between them. Saraphina remained frozen in her chair, staring at the cold gold band on her finger, a shackle Dominic had chosen with dismissive haste. Her breaths were frantic, shallow things. Dominic moved toward her, slowly, as one might a cornered, wounded creature. "It is time to go." His voice made her flinch, but she rose, her limbs barely holding her. She refused to meet his eyes, or perhaps she couldn't. His car, a black Mercedes, idled below, whispering of wealth and dominion. Victor held the door. Saraphina retreated into the plush interior, pressing against the far window, seeking an escape through the unyielding glass. Dominic entered beside her. The solid thud of the door was the sound of a vault being sealed. They crossed Manhattan in a void of silence. The city's lights painted fleeting streaks across her face, illuminating the tear tracks she no longer tried to conceal. It seemed she had surrendered to everything. Saraphina. Her name made her jump, her entire form tensing. "Look at me." With an agonizing slowness, she turned her head. Her gaze met his for the first time since the vows, and the abyss Dominic found there tightened something in his chest. It was not mere fear. It was resignation, an acceptance of the nightmare she was certain would come. "I will not harm you." The promise was ash in the air. She did not believe him. "Do you understand? I am not. I understand my purpose." Her voice was a fragile whisper, frayed by unshed tears. "My mother made it all clear. I know what is required of me." The flat, dead way she spoke twisted something inside Dominic. "What precisely did your mother tell you?" "That I am yours now, that I must." She faltered, her breath catching. "That my purpose is to do as you command, that it is my duty to please you, never to resist, to be—" Her voice fractured into nothing, "to be good." A cold, unfamiliar rage surged through Dominic, not at her but at Aldo, at Catherine, at a world that had distilled this girl into a bargaining chip, teaching her that obedience was her only worth. "They told you that you are my property. Is that it?" Her terrified eyes never left his. "You purchased me in the marriage agreement. My father showed me. You received the shipping lanes, and you receive me. My family is safe. That is the bargain, Saraphina. I am not a fool, Mr. Varlli." Tears now flowed unchecked down her face. "I understand what men of your world do. I have heard the whispers. I know your nature, and I know I have no say in this. So, I will perform my duties. I will be whatever you require. Just please." Her voice became a raw, broken plea. "Please do not hurt me more than is necessary." The car stopped before Dominic's building, a former Tribeca warehouse remade into a fortress of dark glass and steel. He usually felt pride looking at it. Tonight, it felt like a cage. Victor opened her door. Saraphina emerged on trembling legs, and when Dominic's hand touched her elbow, she recoiled so fiercely she almost fell. They ascended the private elevator, wrapped in a suffocating silence. Saraphina watched the floor, marking each second as if walking toward a scaffold. The doors opened into his living space, a stark expanse of concrete and brick, sparse furniture, and glass walls that stared out at the Hudson. It was a space built to command, to intimidate. Seen through her eyes, Dominic saw only its chilling emptiness. She lingered by the entrance, a statue of dread. "The bedrooms are that way." Dominic motioned down a hall. "Your things arrived earlier. They should be in the closet." She gave a small nod, mute. Are you hungry? I can have something sent up. Another silent nod. No words came. Frustration coiled inside Dominic. He handled lethal negotiations, men who prayed for his death, choices that balanced life and destruction. Nothing had forged him for this broken girl who saw a demon when she looked at him. Perhaps she was only seeing the truth. Saraphina. He fought to soften his tone, but it emerged sharp. You have to eat. You barely touched your plate at the reception. I am not hungry. Her voice was hollow. When was the last time you ate? Silence was her only reply. Saraphina. Yesterday morning. The admission was flat, lifeless. I have felt sick since I learned of the arrangement. Food, just... She hugged herself tightly. It does not matter. I am well. She was anything but well. A violent tremor racked her body, her teeth chattering in the warm air. As Dominic stepped closer, she scrambled backward until her shoulders hit the unyielding wall. Pure animal panic flared in her eyes as if she might break and run. He froze, raising his hands, palms open. I'm not going to touch you, but you will. The tears were falling again, quiet streams she no longer noticed. It will happen. That is the purpose of this night, isn't it? The contract, it specifies. She choked on the word. Consummation. Dominic voiced the term for her, and he watched her recoil from the sound. So that is what you believe this is about. And there it was, the cold, unspoken truth of their union. The marriage agreement, in its stark legal prose, held clauses of heirs and bloodlines, of intimate duties required whether they were wanted or not. Dominic had barely glanced at them upon signing. They were archaic formalities, relics of a bygone era. He had assumed Saraphina understood the arrangement, that she would be a pragmatic partner with her own hidden agendas. He never anticipated this innocence, this soul-deep terror. He never expected to feel like a hunter staring down his prey. Go to your room, he said at last. Take a shower, change. I will have food brought to you. And after, her voice was a ghost, after, you will eat and you will sleep. That is all. She did not trust him. My mother said the first night, it is vital that that we are required to. The trembling worsened. She said if I fail to meet the terms, my father will lose it all, that you can nullify the pact, that our family will be. Your mother is mistaken. Dominic's voice was harder than he had intended. Go to the bedroom, Saraphina. Now. She fled, the door clicking softly behind her, a sound of quiet surrender. Dominic stood alone in his vast living room, filled with a sudden urge to break something. All of it, the agreement, the vows, this entire cursed affair, had looked so clean on paper. Gain the roots, forge the alliance, take the wife, and advance. He never factored in the girl being a person. His phone vibrated. Marcus. So how is the married life? The question was a blade. Not so bad? Dominic drifted to the windows, gazing at the distant lights. She is afraid of me. Genuinely afraid. She believes I am going to... He could not say the words. Are you? For God's sake, Marcus, I ask, because you signed a document that says you can, and because I know your methods. Everything is a tool. Everything is a move on the board. So I ask you, as a friend, what is your next move? Dominic shut his eyes. I do not know. You should find out, and fast, because that girl is not a footnote in a deal. She is a person. And if you handle her like property because a paper says so, you will shatter her, and likely yourself along with her. Since when did you become my conscience? Since I watched you become a man, I barely know these last 5 years. You once had lines you would not cross. Dom, be certain this is not one of them." Marcus ended the call. Dominic ordered food he was sure Saraphina would not touch. When it came, he tapped gently on her door. There was no response. "Saraphina, I have left food out here for you. You need to eat." Still only silence. He waited, hearing nothing but the void, and then retreated. An hour passed. When he checked again, the tray was untouched, its contents growing cold. Dominic passed the night in his office, reading reports he knew by heart. Anything to escape the thought of the terrified girl in his bed. As dawn bled over the Hudson, he was no closer to finding answers. A profound quiet filled the penthouse upon his exit. The door to her room stayed shut. The food he'd left had disappeared, though he couldn't know if she'd eaten or merely disposed of it. His morning was a relentless cycle of business. Lawyers on shipping transfers, Victor on security for a new venture, and a tense discussion with a supplier who'd tested his limits. Dominic navigated it with cold precision, his focus fractured. He found Saraphina in the kitchen that evening. She wore jeans and a large sweater, making her seem impossibly young. Her hair, still wet from washing, fell around her shoulders as she made an uncertain attempt at cooking. She moved with a hesitant, awkward grace. "You don't need to do that." His voice shattered the silence, and she flinched. The blade in her hand fell, striking the counter with a sharp sound. "I employ staff for meals. I wanted to—" Her voice trailed off, her gaze fixed on the poorly cut vegetables. "I felt I should. My mother taught me it's my duty to—" "Your mother was wrong about many things." Saraphina wrung her hands. "I don't know what you expect of me." As Dominic approached, she recoiled, the island becoming a barrier between them, forever pulling back, forever in fear. "I want you to stop seeing a monster when you look at me. I'm trying." Her voice cracked. "I truly am, but I have no idea how." "I don't know my role here." She covered her face with her hands. "This is all new to me. I don't know how to be a wife, how to be what you want. I'm afraid I'll fail and you'll—" "You'll what? I don't know?" The confession escaped her, stark and unfiltered. "I don't know what happens when I displease you. Will you send me away? Will you harm me? There are no rules. All I know is this terror, this cage. I can't breathe." Her words dissolved into hyperventilation, each ragged gasp causing her to stumble on her feet. He acted purely on reflex, reaching out, but she recoiled so violently she struck the counter. "Don't touch me!" The cry ripped from her throat. "Please, don't touch me! I can't! I can't!" She crumbled to the floor, folding herself against the cabinets, arms hugging her legs as she fought for air. It was a complete panic attack, her system failing under the weight of her fear. Dominic was paralyzed, witnessing her unravel, a profound helplessness washing over him. His every impulse urged him to assert control, to end this suffering, but he was the cause. He could not command a fear so profound. "Saraphina," his voice was a low, even anchor, "look at me. I need you to open your eyes." But she couldn't comply. They were sealed shut, tears tracing paths down her cheeks as her body trembled. "I will not touch you. I am staying right here. You are safe. Do you hear me? You are safe. I'm not." The words emerged between desperate gasps. "I will never be safe. I am yours now. My father traded me like property, and you purchased me. I have no options, no escape. I can't breathe." Dominic slowly sank to the ground, maintaining a careful distance. Just breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. Do it with me. He showed her, making each breath a deliberate, measured act. After a moment, she made an effort to copy him. It was a long while before her breaths evened out, the terror loosening its grip just enough for words. I'm sorry. Her gaze remained on the floor. I am so sorry. I shouldn't have. I was told to be calm, to be good, to avoid trouble, but I can't. The apologies just tumbled out, but Saraphina. He held the silence until her eyes lifted to his. What exactly did they say about me? She worried her lower lip. That you're dangerous, that you have killed, that the city fears you, that you always get what you desire, no matter the cost. That if I fail to... She trailed off. If you fail to what? If I don't please you, you could ruin my family. The agreement gives you dominion over them. It's my job to make sure this succeeds. A cold, sharp anger ignited in Dominic. Aldo had forged his daughter's fear into a leash, convincing her that her worth was measured only in her submission to a beast. Your family exploited you, he said, his tone biting. They cornered you and called it your obligation. They made you think your sacrifice was their salvation. That isn't protection, Saraphina, that is cowardice. They had no other choice. We were losing it all. My father's debts, the legal issues, the threats from... She cut herself off, aware she'd revealed too much. From whom? She just shook her head. Saraphina, who threatened your family? It is irrelevant now. You control the shipping routes. You have the ability to shield us from anyone who... Again, she fell silent. For Dominic, the puzzle was assembling itself into an ugly image. Her father wasn't merely broke. He had powerful enemies, people coming for him, and rather than confront them, he had hidden behind his own daughter. He was trying to protect us. He was protecting himself. Don't. Her voice trembled. Please don't say that. He is still my father. He is still... She couldn't finish. They both understood. Aldo Varlli offered up his child to preserve his own life, disguising it as honor and duty and love. Your age? The question was sudden. 22. And this plan has been in motion for how long? I am not certain. A few months. I only learned of it 2 weeks ago. She pulled her knees in tighter. My mother sat me down and detailed everything. The debts, the threats, the marriage contract. She called it the only solution, my duty as the eldest daughter. You have siblings? 2 younger sisters still in school. A different light entered her eyes, a fierce protectiveness. They cannot know any of this. They believe I am marrying by choice. Because it is. She gave a bitter laugh. Romantic. And what do they know of you? Nothing real. Only that you are successful and powerful. My mother painted a near respectable picture. Saraphina dried her eyes on her sleeve. They have no idea about your true work, about what you truly are, and what am I. She looked at him, truly saw him, and through her gaze, Dominic saw himself, a builder of violent empires, a taker, a figure of universal fear, a man who'd acquired a terrified girl for her assets. I don't know, she whispered. That's the most terrifying part. I don't know what you are, or what you want, or what you will do. I only know there is no way out. The words hung between them, a raw, brutal truth. Dominic rose with slow, deliberate motion. Get up! Fear sparked in her eyes, yet she complied, getting to her feet on trembling limbs. Return to the bedroom. Please, Saraphina, go to your room and lock the door. I will take the guest room tonight. He took out his phone. I am arranging for a meal. Proper food, not what you were attempting. It will be left outside your door. You will eat every bite. Then you will sleep, that is all. No duties, no contract, no expectations, only sleep. Is that clear? She gave a hesitant nod, her expression one of disbelief. In the morning, we will discuss the reality of this arrangement, the rules, what you can expect. But tonight, you will simply rest. He paused. Can you manage that? I believe so. Good. Now go. And she left. This time, the click of the closing door was not a sound of surrender, but of reprieve. Dominic ordered a meal large enough for 3 people, choosing comforting dishes he hoped she might accept. He left the delivery outside her door with a single knock. He heard her retrieve it 20 minutes later, the faint rustle of containers opening. An hour passed. He checked, and the food was gone. A minor triumph. He spent the night in the guest room, eyes on the ceiling, questioning his own motives. The contract was sealed. The shipping routes were transferring. He had secured his prize, or so he had thought. In reality, he'd acquired a broken girl, bartered away to save a coward's skin. It was a transaction that cast him as a villain more effectively than any of his illicit deeds. Their union felt not like a strategic partnership, but a shared prison. And across the hall, Saraphina was surely also awake, dreading the dawn, believing this temporary kindness was merely a prelude to a more refined torture. His entire empire was founded on his ability to decipher people, to exploit their weaknesses, to take what he desired. Yet becoming the source of someone's terror was never his goal. He never wished to be the monster haunting a young woman's sleep. The question remained, could he be different now? Or had the violence and authority he wielded finally remade him, a man whose gentleness was seen as just another weapon? There were no answers, only more questions breeding in the silence. He was left with the grim realization that his contract had purchased not an asset, but a human being's paralyzing fear. And for the first time in his life of control, Dominic Varlli held absolute power over another and had no idea what to do with it. Morning arrived both too soon and not soon enough. Sleep had offered Dominic no escape, just 2 hours of restless thought before the dawn broke, gray and unforgiving. By 6 o'clock he stood in the kitchen, brewing coffee he had no desire for, listening to the crushing silence of the penthouse. He wondered if Saraphina had found any peace at all. The bedroom door creaked open at 7:30. She was dressed differently, in dark jeans and a plain sweater, her hair tied back. Exhaustion was etched on her face, in the shadows beneath eyes still swollen from weeping, yet she had composed herself into a fragile imitation of calm. "Good morning," her voice was a hushed formality. "Morning," Dominic nodded toward the coffee. "Want some?" She shook her head, but then paused. "Actually, yes, please." He poured a cup for her, black, watching her hands tremble as she added cream and sugar. She refused to meet his eyes, her gaze landing somewhere near his shoulder. "Did you eat last night?" "Yes." "Thank you." She took a tentative sip, wincing at the coffee's heat. "It was more than I could finish. But you ate some. Most of it, actually. I was hungrier than I thought." They stood separated by the kitchen island, a silent, uncrossable border. Outside, the city began to stir. The distant sounds of traffic, construction, the low hum of a million other lives. Inside, the quiet was a physical weight. "We need to talk." Dominic set down his mug. "For real this time." not the discussion we had last night, not the script your parents gave you, just the truth. Seraphina's knuckles whitened around her mug. Okay, sit down. She obeyed, choosing the chair that was furthest away, always creating distance, always looking for an escape. Dominic remained standing, unable to decide what to do with his hands. I'm going to ask some questions, and I require truthful answers. Can you do that for me? I'll try. Did you want this marriage? The directness of it seemed to startle her. Want? Yes, want. Was this your decision, or were you forced? She stared down into her cup. Does it matter? I am here. The contract is done. It matters. Answer the question. No. The word was a small, defeated whisper. I didn't want this. I didn't want any part of this. Did your father offer you a choice? He laid out the situation, the debts, the dangers. He called this the only solution to save the family, to shield my sisters. He phrased it so that... She paused, picking her words with care, so that refusing would make me selfish. And your mother? A bitter laugh escaped Saraphina. My mother prepared me for what to expect, how to act, what you would demand of me. She was explicit about my wifely duties. Her gaze finally lifted to his. She made it perfectly clear that everything hinged on me keeping you happy, that if I failed, they would all pay the price. A cold, precise anger rose in Dominic once more. Your parents sold you, then made you feel guilty for the sale. They were desperate. They were cowards. Stop saying that. Her voice was shaking. They're my family. They sacrificed you to save their own skins. Dominic leaned on the counter. That is not love, Saraphina. That is using your child as a human shield. What would you know about love? The words shot out of her before she could stop them. Her hand flew to her mouth. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have. You're right. I don't know a thing about love. He kept his voice level. But I know what being used looks like, and your father used his own daughter as collateral because he was too weak to deal with his own mistakes. Saraphina jumped to her feet, the chair scraping loudly against the floor. You don't understand. You can't imagine what it's like, watching your family fall to pieces, seeing your father threatened, knowing people want to harm the ones you love. When he told me I could be the one to fix it, that I could save all of them by doing this one thing, what was I supposed to say? No, let them all be destroyed because I was afraid? Yes. Dominic's response was instant. You were supposed to say no. You were supposed to tell your father to solve his own problems, not make them yours. Easy for you to say. You hold all the power, all the choices. I had. She gestured helplessly. I had a duty, a responsibility. 2 sisters who required protection, a family that required saving. What kind of monster would I have been to walk away? A person who valued her own life. My life isn't more important than theirs. The statement hung between them, stark and absolute. Dominic observed her. This girl taught that her value was in her sacrifice, that love meant self-erasure, that being good meant ceasing to exist. Who told you that? Nobody had to? It's just, she hugged herself tightly. It's just a fact. My sisters are young, they have futures, and my parents, whatever their faults, are still my parents. They were in trouble, and I could help. That is all this is. That is not all this is. Dominic stepped closer. She immediately stepped back. He halted, hands raised. I am not going to touch you, but listen. Your father made foolish deals with dangerous men. Instead of facing it, he brokered a trade, you, in exchange for protection and profit. The shipping routes by themselves are worth millions. Then add the alliance, the territory, the access to his contacts. He didn't just save himself, Saraphina. He got wealthy by selling you. She flinched as though he had struck her. That's not... He wouldn't. Would he? The papers were signed yesterday. Do you have any idea what your father made on this, on top of having his debts cleared? I don't want to know. $3 million cash, plus a percentage of all future shipping from his ports. Dominic watched her face turn to ash. He sold you for $3 million and a steady income. That isn't desperation, that's a business deal. Saraphina sank back down, her legs apparently failing her. No, he said it was for protection, only to keep us safe. He lied. You're lying. Dominic took out his phone, called up the contract file, and slid it over to her. Read it yourself. Page 14, Section 7, Payment Terms. She stared at the phone as if it were a snake. Then with a slow, deliberate motion, she took it. Her eyes flew over the text, and Dominic saw the exact moment she found it. The instant reality shattered her last illusion. Her face just crumpled. Oh, the sound was barely a breath. Oh no, I'm sorry. Don't. She pushed the phone back. Don't apologize. You showed me the truth about my father. That is nothing to be sorry for. But new tears were falling, silent ones she did not bother to hide. This wasn't the terror of last night. This was pure, fresh grief, the death of a belief she had needed to survive. He sold me. She said the words out loud, feeling their shape. He actually sold me, like I was an object, like I was nothing. You're not nothing. She gave a sharp, broken laugh. Am I not? My own father put a price on me and found a buyer. That sounds exactly like the definition of nothing. Dominic wanted to argue, but how could he? She was right. Aldo had made his daughter a line item, an asset to be bartered, and Dominic had been on the other side of that transaction. I didn't know. The words felt pointless. When I signed that contract, I assumed you were a willing party to a business arrangement, that you understood what it was. Yes. And now I know differently. Dominic sat across from her, carefully keeping his distance. I know you were cornered into this. I know you're terrified. I know your father's a man who deserves far worse than what I'll likely do to him. And I know none of this is your fault. But the contract is still binding. The contract can be dissolved. Her head snapped up. What? I can terminate it. Send you back to your family. I'll keep the shipping routes as compensation for his breach. Your father loses the $3 million, but you go free. A desperate, brilliant hope flared in her eyes. And then it died. My sisters, what happens to them? The people threatening my father won't care about a voided contract. If I go, if this alliance falls through, they'll come after my family again. My sisters could be... She trailed off, unable to say it. At least this way, they're safe. You can protect them. You would stay in this marriage you hate just to protect your siblings. Your father is the one who should be protecting them. They're 8 and 10 years old. They don't deserve to pay for our father's cowardice. She wiped her tears away angrily. So yes, I will stay. I will do whatever this contract demands. I will be whatever you need. Just promise me they'll be safe. He felt something give way in his chest, a stark recognition of the impossible cage she was in. She could not leave without dooming her sisters. She could not stay without destroying her soul. trapped between loyalty and survival with no good way out. What if there's a third option? There isn't. What if you stayed but we changed the terms? Saraphina looked at him, her eyes weary. Changed them how? We stay married legally. Your family remains under my protection. Your sisters are safe. Your father's enemies are handled. But between us, the expectations are different. I don't understand. Dominic chose his words with care. The contract makes us husband and wife. It does not say you have to be afraid of me. It doesn't say you must sacrifice yourself. We can turn this arrangement into something bearable. Bearable? She tested the word. What does that mean? It means I will not force you to do anything. Not for intimacy, not for show, none of the duties your mother lectured you about. You live here. We keep up appearances when we must, and your family is safe. But behind our doors, you are free. Free. The word sounded alien coming from her. I don't believe you. I know you don't. Not yet. But I am making the offer anyway. Her eyes searched his for a long moment, hunting for the deception she was sure lay hidden. Why are you doing this? What's your end game? He listed the practicalities, the shipping lanes, the partnership, the tactical edge. Then he hesitated. And perhaps the chance to sleep without ghosts. You don't seem like a man who's troubled by his choices. I never was. But to see you break last night, thinking I was about to be stopped, it wasn't a moment I'm proud of. You felt regret. I felt like a monster. Maybe you are, she replied, her voice devoid of venom, a simple statement of fact. Or maybe we're both just trying to find our footing in a storm neither of us created. Maybe. Silence descended as the morning light bled through the glass, and from somewhere deep in the building, music began to play. A faint bass line pulsed through the structure, the sound of an ordinary world continuing on without them as they drew the lines of her cage. I need assurances. Seraphina's voice was steadier now, the tremble gone. If I am to remain here, if I am to do this, I have to know my sisters are truly protected. Not a promise of safety, but the fact of it. Done. They will have a security detail, unseen, but absolute. And my father's debts, the men who were threatening him. As of yesterday, his creditors report to me. Anyone who pursues him must first come through me. Dominic leaned forward, his voice low. Your sisters are untouchable. Your family has my protection, whether your father has earned it or not. What of the $3 million he was paid? What about it? Can you take it back? Make him forfeit it? Dominic's eyebrow rose. Why would you want that? Because he cannot profit from selling me. He cannot be allowed to think this was a shrewd bargain. Her voice hardened to steel. I need him to understand the true cost of what he's done. There it was. Dominic saw it then. The iron spine she had been taught to conceal but had never lost. I can make that happen, though it will cause your family significant financial hardship. Good. Let him scramble. Let him learn what real desperation feels like, instead of using me as his currency. For the first time, her gaze met his, direct and unflinching. I will sacrifice myself for my sisters, but my father will not be rewarded for it. Consider it done. Just like that? Just like that. Dominic drew his phone and sent a message to his legal team. By the close of business, that $3 million will be restructured into a loan with punitive terms. He'll curse the day he ever saw it. A flicker of something like grim satisfaction crossed Seraphina's face. Thank you. Don't thank me. I am still the man whose contract holds you here. But you are also the man making this prison bearable. She cradled her coffee mug, as if drawing life from its warmth. And that is something. The silence that fell between them this time was different. Less a battlefield, more a fragile truce. I have some questions, Saraphina's voice was quiet. About you, about this life, about what I have become a part of? Ask. The things whispered about you, are they true? That depends on the whispers. That you have killed. That you command a criminal enterprise. That you are dangerous. Dominic weighed the comfort of a lie against the promise of honesty he'd given her. Yes, all of it is true. She absorbed the confession without a tremor. How many? How many have I killed? Yes. Are you sure you want that number? I am living with you, bound to you. I think I am entitled to know the man I am bound to. A fair point. I stopped keeping count after the first few. Some were in self-defense. Some were for business. Some... He trailed off. Some were because I could, fueled by anger or to teach a lesson. Sometimes it was merely the path of least resistance. Do you regret it? The question caught him unprepared. Some of them, the ones who didn't deserve it, the ones who were simply in the wrong place, but not all of them. No, not all. Some men need to be removed from the world. They still do. Saraphina was silent for a moment. My father described you as ruthless. He said you built this empire on fear and violence. He made it sound like a strength. It is not strength. It is survival that grew into a sickness. What does that mean? Dominic stood, moving to the window and creating a gulf between them. I was raised in a home where weakness was beaten out of you, where emotion was a weapon handed to your enemy. The only way to live was to be harder, crueler, and more willing to do monstrous things than anyone else. So I became that. And it worked. I survived. I built this. I made myself into the one who was feared rather than the one who was hurt. But somewhere on that path, survival became conquest. Fear became power. And I stopped asking if I should do a thing and simply did it because I could. Because no one had the power to stop me. He turned to face her. Your father was right. I am ruthless. I am dangerous. And the things I have done would make you run from this room if you had anywhere else to go. I'm not running. You should be. But I'm not. She rose and moved toward the window, maintaining a careful distance. Do you want to know what I think? What? I think you are saying all this to frighten me, to make me understand the monster you are, so I will... What? Cower? Be more obedient? Know my place? She shook her head. But here's the truth. I am already at the peak of my terror. You cannot make it worse. So perhaps you can spare me the performance and just tell me who you are. Dominic simply stared. This woman who just last night was trembling too hard to stand was now calling his bluff with a chilling clarity. You are far more perceptive than I credited you for. My father treated me as an ornament, beautiful, stupid, and useful only as a trade. But I am not stupid. I have spent my entire life watching and learning from the shadows. She hugged herself tightly. So do not treat me as if I am naive. I know what you are. I see this world for what it is. I am just trying to learn the rules of survival here. Fair enough. Dominic returned to his seat. The truth, then? No theatrics. I built my empire with violence because it was the only tool I was ever taught to use. I excel at it, more than any man should, and I don't regret most of it. because the world I move in has no reward for mercy. But you are showing me mercy, am I? Or am I just hesitating to add your name to the long list of things I have broken? Does it matter which it is? I don't know. And that was the absolute truth. Dominic had no answer for why Saraphina's terror had pierced his armor when nothing else ever had. He didn't know why her fear felt different from the fear of his rivals and his enemies. He did not know why the thought of forcing her across that line made him feel as if he would be damning himself forever. They faced each other across the table, two prisoners of a circumstance neither had chosen, trying to map a path to survival. "What happens now?" Saraphina finally asked. "Now we find a way to coexist without destroying one another." "That is the plan?" "That is the start of it. The rest we invent as we go." The barest hint of a smile touched her lips. "You do not strike me as a man who invents things as he goes." "I don't usually have to. Most situations can be controlled. This," he gestured at the air between them, "this is new ground for both of us." "Yes." The silence that followed was different. It wasn't comfortable, not yet, but it was no longer hostile. Just two individuals beginning to see past the roles of a grim transaction. "I have to go out," Dominic stood. "Business that cannot be delayed. Victor will be here. If you require anything, he will provide it." "Victor, your head of security?" "Yes. He appears formidable, but he is—" Dominic paused. "He is a decent man. You will be safe with him." "Safe?" She repeated the word as if it were a foreign language she was just learning. "Okay." "There is food in the kitchen. Help yourself. The television works. There are books in the office. The gym is on the second floor. This is your space now as well." "My space." She scanned the penthouse, as if truly seeing it for the very first time. "I don't know what to do with space." "What do you mean?" "I have lived my entire life in my father's house, by my mother's rules, being exactly who they needed me to be. I have never had a space that was just for me, never a moment that wasn't scheduled or watched." Her eyes found his. "I don't know how to simply be without someone giving me direction." The admission wounded him in a way he hadn't anticipated. "Then learn. You have time now, an ocean of it." "And when you return?" "When I return, we will have dinner. We will talk. We will continue to solve this." He went to the door, then stopped. "Saraphina, I meant what I said last night. I will not harm you, not physically, not in any way." "That is not what this is." "Then what is it?" "Honestly, I am still trying to figure that out." He was gone before she could reply, the elevator doors sliding shut on her uncertain face. As he descended, Dominic felt the crushing weight of his commitments. He had made vows he wasn't sure he could uphold, offered a clemency he did not know if he truly possessed. He had tried to be a man he had never been before. Victor waited in the lobby, leaning against a wall, his arms crossed. "How did it go?" "She knows about the money, about her father's role." "How did she take it?" "Better than I had any right to expect, and worse than she ever should have had to." Dominic turned for the door. "She is upstairs by herself. Keep watch over her. Not too close, but ensure she is unharmed. You believe she might flee? I believe she might vanish in other ways. Just be gentle when you check." Victor gave an understanding nod. "Where to now?" "We're going to speak with Aldoval at last." A cold smile touched Victor's lips. "Should I get the tools?" "Not this time. This is only a talk, but he needs to know there won't be a second one." They crossed the city, moving through districts that bled from opulence to industry and back. Aldo's office sat in midtown, in a tower that reeked of old wealth desperately clinging to its facade. Dominic had stood in this place once during the initial contract talks. Aldo had been nothing but warm handshakes and slick promises then. Today would not be the same. The elevator carried them to the 14th floor. Aldo's secretary, a frightened woman in her 50s, tried to block their path, but a single glance from Victor sent her scurrying aside. Aldo was on a call when they walked in, chuckling at some private joke. His laughter died the moment he saw Dominic. "I will have to call you back." He ended the call abruptly. "Varlli, I wasn't expecting you. I assumed our terms were finalized." "They were. We're here to discuss new ones." Dominic took a seat uninvited. Victor shut the door, standing as a sentinel before it. "I'm afraid I don't follow. The $3 million you made selling your own daughter, we're taking it." The color drained from Aldo's face, then returned as a blotchy crimson. "That isn't possible. That sum was part of our deal. You can't just—" "I can do as I please. The only choice you have is if this is easy or difficult. The agreement gave you cash. It made no promise that you could keep it." Dominic settled into the chair, the picture of calm. "Think of it as a loan that has just come due, with an exceptionally high rate of interest. This is just theft." "No, this is commerce. Theft would involve me threatening your well-being for the money. I am merely advising you of a change in terms." Aldo rose, feigning an authority he no longer possessed. "I can dispute this. I could take you to court. That contract is ironclad. You could, but consider this. Do you want a war with me over money you gained by trading your child like chattel?" Dominic's tone turned to ice. "Because I swear to you, Aldo, you will not win that war. You will not survive it." The menace filled the room, thick and suffocating. Aldo collapsed back into his chair, a man deflated. "What is the reason for this?" The arrangement was settled. Saraphina consented. Everything was concluded. Saraphina did not consent. She was compelled. There is a distinction. She was given a choice. She was given the fantasy of a choice. It is not the same. Dominic leaned in. "You wielded your own child like a pawn and convinced her it was her obligation. You terrified her into submission by holding her sister's welfare hostage. You let her think she was rescuing the family when you were only rescuing yourself. And you profited from her sacrifice. I did what was necessary." "No, you did what was simple. What allowed you to escape the fallout from your own failures." Dominic got to his feet. "The money is forfeit. My people will reach out to yours about the repayment schedule. You will pay it back over the next 10 years with interest that will make you curse every cent you touched. I don't have that kind of liquidity. The shipping lanes belong to you now. Then you had better find a solution. Be resourceful." "Is that not what you said to Saraphina when you sold her away? That hard times demand sacrifice." Dominic walked toward the exit. "Now you will learn what those words truly feel like." "Stop." Aldo's voice was a brittle whisper. "My other girls, my younger ones, the safety you offered them is still guaranteed, yes? Unlike you, I do not make children pay for the sins of their father." Dominic stopped at the doorway. "But be clear, that safety is only for them. If you step out of bounds, if you create trouble, if you go anywhere near Saraphina without my say-so, our next talk will be of a very different nature. She is my child. She was your child. She is now my wife. And I, unlike you, intend to treat her as if she is more than just an asset." He left Aldo frozen in the office, his expression a storm of fury, terror, and perhaps a flicker of shame. Victor was silent beside him until they were back in the elevator. "Do you feel better?" Not in the slightest. Dominic hit the button for the ground floor. But it had to be done. "What is your plan for her? For Saraphina? I have no idea. You have a fondness for her? I don't know the woman, but you care for her. Or you wish her no harm, which in your world is the same thing." Dominic offered no reply because Victor saw the truth. Some part of Saraphina had burrowed under his defenses, making him doubt things he'd long accepted as fact, making him desire to be a man other than the one he was. The real question was if change was even possible. Could a man whose entire world was built on brutality and fear ever become someone a broken girl might one day learn to trust? He had no answers, only questions that grew heavier each time Saraphina met his gaze with those wounded eyes. Every time she pulled away from his hand, every time she tried to project a strength she didn't feel. When Dominic got back to the penthouse later, Saraphina was in the kitchen once more. This time she had succeeded in making a meal. Pasta with what appeared to be sauce from a jar. A salad made with more determination than grace. She stood with her back to him at the stove, and for a beat he simply observed her navigating the room as if mapping out the edges of her cage. "That smells good!" She flinched, whirling around, the wooden spoon held before her like a blade. Seeing it was him, her posture relaxed, but the wariness never quite left her face. "I cooked dinner. I was unsure of your return, so I just—" She motioned toward the pot. "There is plenty for both of us. If you are hungry, you didn't need to do this. I needed to occupy my hands. Victor showed me where you keep everything." She returned to the stove, stirring the sauce pointlessly. He is surprisingly gentle for a man who looks as if he could tear someone apart. He can be. Dominic undid his tie, feeling the day's weight settle deep in his bones. "What did the two of you discuss?" "Literature for the most part. He saw me studying your library and began suggesting authors. I never would have pegged him as a reader. Few people do. They notice the scars in his build and decide that is the entire story." Saraphina put the spoon aside and began to serve the food with measured motions. "Is that how they see you as well? They see the monster and think that's all you are." The query took him by surprise. I rarely concern myself with what others think. But not always. She offered him a plate, her gaze still averted. "If you didn't, you never would have told me about the money, about my father. You would have let me believe the version of the story I already knew. Perhaps I just needed you to see the kind of man your father truly is. Or perhaps you needed me to see the kind of man you hope to become." She finally met his eyes then. "So, which is it?" Dominic accepted the plate and walked to the table. "I don't know yet." They ate without speaking for a time. The pasta was plain but filling. The gesture behind it held more weight than the flavor. Beyond the windows, the sun bled across the Hudson, bathing the penthouse in strokes of fire and crimson. "I spoke to my mother earlier today." Saraphina's voice was a whisper. "I used the telephone in your study. I hope you don't mind. It's your telephone as well. You require no one's permission." Force of habit. She nudged the pasta on her plate. "I called her, said I was adjusting, that everything was well." What was her response? She wanted to know if I was meeting my obligations, if I was making you content, if I had— Saraphina's voice frayed. "If I had performed the duty she drilled into me, the one expected on a wedding night." Dominic put his fork down. "And what was your answer?" I lied? I told her it was all just as she had coached me, that I was being a dutiful wife. She looked at him, her eyes glistening with unshed, angry tears. I could not tell her what really happened. I couldn't bear to say that my own husband has shown me more decency than my mother ever did. That the man I was bred to fear is the only one who has bothered to ask me what I want. Saraphina, she sold me too, do you see? She claims it was for our family, that it was my purpose. But she stood with my father, convinced me this was noble and necessary. And all that time she was training me to be. She faltered, swallowing, to be used. That was the point of all those lessons. How to bear it, how to make myself invisible and silent and agreeable, how to withstand being someone's possession. I am sorry. Don't be. You are not the person who did this to me. You are only the person who ended up owning me. She rose from her seat with a jolt, gathering the dishes, though Dominic was not done eating. My mother wondered when I would be by for a visit, to bring my new husband to meet everyone. She wants to parade me around, the living proof that her sacrifice was worth it. You are not required to go. Yes, I am. My sisters are still there. I have to see them to confirm they are safe. She turned on the tap, her gestures sharp, full of agitation. Anyway, don't you want to see your return on investment? To show the family you now possess their daughter? Is that not how these things are done? This is not what that is. Is it not? You took me in marriage to secure shipping lanes and a foothold in new territory. Your civility does not alter the core of the deal. She scraped at a dish that was already spotless. I am still the asset you acquired, the price my father was willing to pay. Dominic rose, stepping toward her, but did not make contact. You are furious. Of course I am furious. I'm enraged. I am. She brought the plate down on the counter with enough force that it fractured. I am so full of rage I can hardly draw a breath. At my father for trading me, at my mother for helping, and at myself for being too frightened to refuse. At you for this whole nightmare, even as you try to fix it. At the whole world. I'm drowning in it. Then rage, he told her. Shatter something if you must. Her eyes fell to the fractured dish, then to his face. You're serious? I am. This is your home now. If something needs to be broken for you to feel whole, then break it. Plates can be replaced. That's madness. Perhaps, but it's better than letting the venom fester within. Saraphina watched him, a change flickering deep inside her. With a sudden movement, she seized the damaged plate and hurled it at the wall. The explosive sound of it shattering was a release, shards skittering across the floor. Gasping for air, she stared in disbelief at what she'd done. Then a sound tore from her, a wild, fractured laugh tangled with a sob. Oh my God, I actually threw a plate. Any better? He asked. Actually, yes. That felt... She laughed again, a tear tracing the path down her cheek. That was incredible. Care for another? No. Maybe. I'm not sure. She sank to the floor, surrounded by the remnants of her rage. I've never deliberately destroyed anything, never allowed myself that kind of fury. Just push it down, be pleasant, keep the peace. As Dominic took a broom and began clearing the debris, he spoke. You can cause a storm here. You can rage. You can shatter every dish we own if it brings you peace. You truly mean that. I do. She observed him sweeping, a bizarrely tranquil scene set against a backdrop of turmoil. Why are you so good to me? I am not a good man. Anyone will tell you that. But with me you are. Why? After tossing the shards into the bin, Dominic rested against the counter. I can't honestly say. Perhaps because seeing your pain is more unsettling than any deal I've ever made. Or maybe I'm weary of playing the villain. Or it could be I see you were handed an impossible fate, and I can at least refuse to worsen it. Those are all very calculated answers. What is it you want from me? An admission of caring? We've known each other for 2 days, but you feel something. Otherwise, this would mean nothing. And he knew she was right. The truth of it disturbed something deep within his core. For 20 years, he had meticulously excised caring from his life, viewing connections as mere transactions, holding the world at a distance. Yet this woman, a bride acquired for trade lanes, was stirring emotions he had long since buried. "Let's establish some rules," he said, deflecting. "Things you can accept, things you cannot, your limits." Saraphina drew her knees in tightly. "Such as physical contact. I understand you don't want me to touch you. I respect that. But for appearances, if we must present a certain image, may I place a hand on your back? Take your hand?" She paused to think. If I am warned, if I know it is a performance, then I can endure it. But no surprises, and nothing beyond that. No embrace, no kiss. Understood. And our living space? Would you prefer your own room? Is that an option? The choice is yours. Yes. I need a space of my own, a place to shut the door and feel truly alone. It's done. There are 3 spare rooms. Choose one and your belongings will be moved. She looked stunned. As simple as that. As simple as that. Anything else? I need to work or volunteer. I can't just remain here all day for you to return like some... Her voice trailed off. Like some possession. What is it you would like to do? I'm not sure. I was never allowed to consider it. My parents' only expectation was a good marriage and a home to run. That was my future. A bitter laugh escaped her. I suppose they got the marriage part right. At least in terms of wealth. What did you study before everything changed? Education. I dreamed of being a teacher for young children. A softness transformed her features. I adore children. Their candor, their wonder, how they view the world before it's explained to them. Then be a teacher. I lack the degree. I was forced to leave when my father's finances collapsed. The fees became impossible. The money is there now. Complete your education, earn your credentials, or volunteer while you decide your path. Dominic drew out his phone. My assistant can arrange consultations with several programs. Find one that suits you. You're not joking? Why would I be? You want to work, then work. Your existence does not end because of our marriage. Saraphina gazed at him as if he were a complete stranger. This is utterly mad. My father barters me away to a syndicate chief, who then reveals himself to be a proponent of female empowerment. I am a proponent of utility. Your idleness and misery serve no purpose. Pursuing something meaningful is a more productive outcome for us both. Of all the dangerous men I have known, you are the most peculiar. You have known many? Just you and my father, I suppose. His brand of danger was less about broken bones and more about slowly dismantling your soul. Both leave their marks. Yeah. She rose, smoothing her clothes. May I ask a personal question? You may ask. I may not respond. Is there family? Anyone you hold dear? His mind briefly touched on his Aunt Teresa, the sole family member at their wedding. One aunt. We speak perhaps twice annually, that is all. My parents are gone. My father passed when I was 19. My mother some years after. I am sorry. There is no need. My father was a cruel man, fueled by drink, who spoke with his hands. My mother allowed it. Their deaths were no great loss to me. For the first time, Saraphina closed the distance between them. Is that the reason you see it? Why you are trying to be different, perhaps? I am acquainted with helplessness, with your life being dictated by another, with feeling terror in the one place you should feel safe. His gaze met hers. I made a vow upon leaving that house to never be weak again, to never grant anyone that power over me. And yet you now have that power over me, I do. Which is why I attempt not to wield it. I attempt. But you have the ability, should you choose. I could. There was no sense in deception. The marriage contract grants me immense legal power over you. Your father ensured it. But would you use it? If my actions enraged you or fell short of your expectations, would you enforce that power? The word no burned in his throat, the urge to soothe her, to promise her safety. But he had vowed truth, and truth required acknowledging the darkness within him. I cannot say. I hope that I would not, but I have committed monstrous acts for reasons far less than rage or disillusionment. I cannot guarantee I am a changed man simply by a vow. She took in his words, her nod slow and deliberate. Thank you for the truth. You requested honesty. The majority would have offered a comforting lie. I am not the majority. No. A faint smile touched her lips. You truly are not. In the following days, a peculiar cadence took hold. Dominic would depart early for affairs Saraphina knew better than to question. Her mornings were for exploring their gilded cage. Her afternoons were spent in discussions with education programs, a lead from Victor's wife, a surprising discovery. At night they would dine, at times in quiet, at others with hesitant words that flowed more freely with each passing day. Saraphina chose the bedroom at the hall's far end, where eastern windows greeted the dawn. Her belongings were relocated at Dominic's silent order. She began to leave traces of herself, books on tables, a coat over a chair, small proofs of life that warmed the cold, empty rooms. On the fourth day, Marcus arrived without warning. Dominic was in his study when Victor's voice came through the intercom. Chen is here. Insists it is urgent. Let him in. Marcus entered, his expression troubled. We have to discuss the Colombo issue. Not at the moment. Yes, at the moment. They are protesting about the shipping lanes, saying we encroached on Vale's turf. It is no longer Vale's turf, it is mine. And that is the issue. They had a deal with Aldo, a steady flow of cash in their pocket. That cash flow has ceased, and they are incensed. The familiar rage began to simmer inside Dominic. Then let them be incensed. I refuse to bargain. You may have no choice, if you wish to avoid a war. I have managed wars before, not of this kind, not with... Marcus's voice dropped. Not with a wife who needs protection. The statement landed with unexpected weight. Dominic rose and walked to the window. What are you implying? I am implying they are aware of Saraphina. The whole city is aware, and some are questioning if she is a liability they can leverage. If a hand is laid on her, I am certain you would set the city ablaze, but that is no comfort to her after the fact. Marcus moved nearer. My intent is not to frighten you. It is to force you to think with strategy. The Dominic of old would have anticipated this. He would have had countermeasures ready. The Dominic of old was not encumbered. You mean he was indifferent to innocent casualties? Marcus observed him closely. What is going on with you? You've changed since the marriage. Unfocused. It is under control. Is it? Because from my perspective, your choices are being driven by emotion, not commerce. And in this life, that is a fatal error. Dominic's phone vibrated. A message from a number he did not recognize. He read it, and a chill spread through his veins. It was a photograph of Saraphina exiting the building just hours before. The shot's angle suggested a car parked across the way. No text, only the image. "We have a situation." He showed the phone to Marcus. "When did this arrive?" "Moments ago." Dominic was already a phantom in motion, heading for the living room where Saraphina sat, absorbed in a book. She glanced up, his expression a storm cloud that made her body go rigid. "What's happened?" "We're discussing your security." "Security? Someone is watching you." He displayed the photo. "This was sent 5 minutes ago." The warmth fled her face. "Who? Why would they?" "Because they understand your value. Because they see you as a lever to move me." Dominic's voice was ice, bearing the furnace of his rage. "Which means your entire way of life must change." "You mean I'm to be a captive?" "I mean you require protection. Ceaseless protection. Victor will organize a detail." "No." Seraphina shot to her feet, the book sliding to the floor. "No. I had just begun to breathe again, to feel a flicker of freedom. I will not give it up. This is not a negotiation. Everything is. You told me I would have choices." "That was before someone declared you a target with a photograph." "You don't know it's a threat." "It is a threat." Dominic's voice hardened to stone. "I know this game. First, they show you they can get close. The next time, it will not be just a picture." From the doorway, Marcus cleared his throat. "He is right, Saraphina. This is serious. Naturally, you're on his side. I am on the side of keeping you alive." Marcus looked to Dominic. "But she isn't wrong. Lock her down and you just become her father with a different name." Dominic wanted to protest, but the truth stung. He turned back to Saraphina. "What do you propose?" "I want to be safe, but I also need to be human, not some piece of art in a vault." "So what is the compromise?" She paused. "Security when I am out, agreed, but not hovering inside, not trailing me. I must have a sliver of a normal life." "I will not be a prisoner in this home." "Agreed. But you adhere to Victor's protocols. You tell us your destination. You take no foolish risks." "Because my risks are your problems. Because I do not want you hurt." The words escaped, rawer than Dominic had intended. "Is that so impossible to believe?" Seraphina stared at him. "No, that is what frightens me. That you might mean it." "Why does that scare you?" "Because it is simpler when you are the monster. When this is a cold transaction, I can hate you then without confusion." She hugged herself. "But you keep showing these glimpses of a man, and it tangles everything." Marcus made a quiet retreat, muttering about the perimeter. The silence he left behind felt like a physical pressure. "I don't know how to do this." Seraphina's voice was faint. "I don't know how to be your wife while being terrified of what you are. How to welcome protection that exists only because I am your leverage." She stopped. "How to begin to trust you when my entire life has taught me not to." "You shouldn't trust me, not fully. I am not a good man, Saraphina. I am trying to be something better for you, but I do not know if better is in my nature." "That is not reassuring." "It is honest." "Yes." She slumped back, suddenly drained. "It is that." Dominic's phone rang, shattering the moment. "Victor, we have the vehicle from the photo. A traffic camera caught the license plate. It is registered to a Colombo lieutenant." "Bring him in." "Quietly or loud?" Dominic looked at Seraphina, who sat looking so fragile and afraid, yet fighting to be brave. "Loud." I want it known what happens when they threaten what is mine. He cut the call. Saraphina's eyes were fixed on him. What are you going to do? Handle it. That means hurting someone, possibly killing them. All because of a picture. Because of what it represents. They are testing the fences, and I must show them the line is electrified. She rose and moved to the window, her form a ghost in the dark pane. This is your world, a place of violence and intimidation. Yes. And now I belong to it, wanted or not. Yes. Then I need a promise from you. What? That when you do what you're about to do, it is truly necessary. Not just anger, not just power, that there is a genuine reason. Dominic moved to stand near her, respecting the distance. They sent your photograph as their message. It says they can reach you, that they will use you against me. If I do not answer with overwhelming force, every enemy I have will believe you are a viable target. That is the reason. Is it necessary enough? She gave a slow, pained nod. I hate that it makes sense. Welcome to my world. Our world now, she corrected him. For better or worse, wasn't that what we vowed? I don't remember the vows. I was too busy watching you shake. I remember them, every word. I was terrified that speaking them would make this nightmare real, that it would trap me. She turned to face him fully. It seems I was right. If you want out, I can't get out. My sisters, and now I'm being photographed. If I leave, they will follow. I will still be leveraged, married or not. She gave a hollow laugh. I'm imprisoned by my own protection. That is almost poetic. Saraphina, this is not your fault. I am not blaming you. You are trying to keep me safe. I understand. She laid a palm flat against the window. I just wish safety did not feel so much like a cage. Dominic's phone buzzed. Victor again. We have him. A warehouse in Red Hook. He isn't talking. I will be there in 20 minutes. You are going now, she stated, not asked. Yes. To hurt him. To get answers. Whatever is required. She turned from the window. Then go do what you must. I will be here, locked inside my safe cage. That's not fair. None of this is. That is the point. She glided past him toward her room. Just try not to enjoy it. The violence. I know you are capable of monstrous things, but I want to believe some part of you feels something when you cause pain. The door shut before he could form a reply, leaving Dominic alone, feeling as if he had lost a war he never knew was being waged. The Red Hook warehouse was a cathedral of neglect, abandoned, silent, a place where screams died unheard. The man Victor had taken was tied to a chair, bleeding from his mouth but otherwise preserved for what was to come. His name is Danny Costa, Victor said, handing Dominic a file. Works for Marco Colombo. A street-level soldier, nothing of note. Who sent him for the picture? He's claiming it was routine surveillance. That Marco just wanted to know your movements. Dominic approached the chair. Danny's defiant glare was paper-thin. I don't know a thing. You know who sent you, you know why, and you know what is about to happen if you remain quiet. Marco will kill me if I talk. I will kill you if you don't. The only question is which fate you'd prefer. Danny's throat worked. I want a lawyer, Dominic nearly laughed. This isn't an arrest, Danny. There are no lawyers. There is only you, me, and the threshold of your pain. I've got rights. The first strike snapped Danny's head to the side, blood arcing from his nose. Dominic felt the cold surge, the old predator waking inside him. This was his element. Try again. Who sent you? Marco. Marco Colombo. Danny was weeping now. He said, watch the girl, learn her patterns, report. Report what? When she's alone, where she goes, who protects her? Danny spat blood. He's planning something. I don't know the specifics. But you have theories. He's angry about the shipping routes, about losing Vale's territory. He means to harm you by harming her. Danny's silence was his confession. Dominic struck him again, felt the sickening crunch of bone. The violence was a comfort that made him ill. This was him. This was his function. When? I don't know. Soon. He's gathering men, making moves. That's all I know, I swear. Victor stepped in. He's either being truthful or he's the best liar alive. Dominic stepped away, his hands slick with blood. Get rid of him. Wait. Danny's voice was a high-pitched plea. You said if I talked... I said I would kill you if you did not. I never promised you would live if you did. Dominic turned to Victor. Be quick. He cooperated. Please. Dominic walked out before the man's begging could end. Outside, the night air was a cold slap. His hands were shaking, not with fear, but from the brutal cocktail of adrenaline and violence that always left him feeling both omnipotent and empty. His phone buzzed. A text from Saraphina. Did you get your answers? He stared at the screen, surprised. Yes. Are you okay? The question was so absurd he almost laughed. When had anyone last asked him that? I'm fine. Home in 1 hour. I'll leave dinner out for you. Such a civilized reply to such savagery, such a peculiar, fractured life they were building. When he returned to the penthouse, Saraphina was on the couch, curled up with a book, her gaze lifted as he entered, taking in the bruised knuckles and the emptiness in his eyes. Go and get cleaned up. I'll warm the dinner. He complied, scrubbing away the crimson, trying to wash off the stain of his actions. When he returned, pasta and bread were set out. A glass of wine was poured. Their meal passed in a heavy silence. Saraphina asked nothing of the blood or of the events at the warehouse. She never questioned if the man lived or died. She just sat opposite him, sharing a meal as if it were any other night. I spoke to a volunteer coordinator today. Her voice was deliberately casual. At an elementary school over in Brooklyn. They're in need of reading tutors. That sounds positive. I'll start the week after next, Tuesdays and Thursdays. Victor is arranging the security. I assumed he would. She raised her glass. The coordinator was nice, normal. She has no clue who she just hired. Does that fact bother you? No, it's a relief, really, to just be Saraphina for a while. Not the girl who was sold or the wife of a killer, just myself. You're allowed to be just yourself here, as well. She met his gaze, a profound sadness in her eyes. Am I, really? Can I be, when I am always aware of what you are and the things you can do? I don't know. Neither do I. She placed her fork on the plate. I am trying, Dominic. I am truly trying to find a way to exist within this, to keep from hating you, and to keep from hating myself for it. But it is so hard when you come to me with blood on your hands, and I am meant to treat it as ordinary. You want me to lie? To be a man I am not? No, I want... She stopped, shaking her head. I don't know what I want. That's the entire problem. I am lost in all of this. In you, in this life, in who I am meant to be now. Dominic pushed his plate back. The man from tonight is dead. Victor handled the disposal. He was colluding with Colombo to harm you, perhaps take you, or worse. So I had him removed. And I have no regrets about it. Saraphina received this information without a visible reaction. Should you have regrets? An ordinary man probably would. Are you an ordinary man? No. Then you cannot expect an ordinary response. She rose, beginning to clear the table. I am not saying you were right. I am not in a position to make that judgment, but I can understand your reasons. That is all I can give you. That is more than I hoped for. Don't mistake my understanding for acceptance. She turned toward him. I see why you hurt people, why you kill, why violence is your answer, but that doesn't mean I accept it. It does not mean I will ever be at peace with it. I am not asking for your peace. Then what are you asking for? Dominic offered no answer. He didn't know what he wanted. Beyond an end to her fear, beyond a truce that made their life together tolerable, beyond the growing certainty that her presence mattered in a way he couldn't articulate. I am asking for time, he finally uttered. Time for us to learn what this is. We are two people bound by a contract neither of us desired. That is what we are, and what could we be if we tried? She held his gaze for a long moment. I don't know. Maybe something that causes less pain. Maybe something that doesn't feel like I'm drowning. She paused. Maybe we should just face each day as it comes and stop trying to name it. One day at a time. Yes. She walked to her room. Good night, Dominic. Good night. She hesitated at the door. For what it is worth, I see that you are trying. Even when I cannot find the right response, the effort does not go unnoticed. And then she was gone. The soft click of her door no longer felt like a sound of defeat. It was merely the end of a day and the quiet promise of a new one. Dominic remained alone, watching the city lights, his mind filled with images of broken hands, dead men, and a woman who fought to find humanity in a life designed to crush it. He had forged his entire world on being feared, on revealing no weakness, on destroying any who stood against him. And yet, his greatest challenge was a 22-year-old woman who regarded him with a mix of hope and terror, and asked him to be more than he had ever been. The true question was if more was achievable. If a man whose only language was violence could learn to speak with kindness, if a man who had spent 20 years erecting walls could dismantle them for a near stranger, he had no answers, only hands that would never feel clean, an emptiness that violence no longer filled, and the growing dread that Saraphina veil was changing him in ways he could not grasp, which terrified him more than anything ever had. 2 weeks passed in a delicate negotiation of space. Saraphina began volunteering in Brooklyn, bringing home stories of children who cherished books they couldn't yet read, and of second graders who viewed the world with a brave curiosity. Dominic absorbed these stories during their dinners, feeling a fierce urge to protect the brightness in her voice, a glimpse of the woman she might have been. Victor's security detail moved like unseen shadows, a constant, silent presence. Saraphina learned to block them out, the way city dwellers learn to ignore the sound of sirens. She was forging a rhythm in her gilded cage that almost felt normal. Almost. The news broke on a Tuesday morning. Dominic was in a meeting with his lawyers regarding territory when Marcus burst in unannounced. We have a problem. Dominic rose instantly. Saraphina? No, her sister, the little one. Someone made a move on her outside of school. The world went cold. Made a move? Our men stopped it, but it was close, far too close. Marcus's face was stone. It's escalating. Dominic was already moving, dialing his phone. Get Saraphina home immediately and bring me Marco Colombo. Boss, if we take Marco, it is full-scale war. Then it's war. Nobody is to touch those children. Nobody. He cut the call. Marcus watched him with open concern. You need to think this through. A war. For what? For a 10-year-old girl whose only sin was being born to a coward and having a sister I married. Dominic grabbed his coat. This is precisely what I warned them would occur. They pushed the boundaries. I answer with overwhelming power. That is the system. That was the old system. You have Saraphina to consider now. If you go to war, she is the primary target. She is already the primary target. They made that clear with the photo, and with this move on her sister. Dominic moved to the door. The only way to ensure her safety is to make them so terrified of me they wouldn't dream of it. Or you could negotiate. Find some common ground with Colombo. There is no common ground with men who threaten children. Victor called back. Saraphina is secure, on her way now. She is asking questions. Tell her I will explain everything when I'm there, boss. She's not going to handle this well. She's already beside herself about her sister. Then keep her contained until my arrival. Dominic got into his car, the driver already pulling away. And find Marco. I don't care what is required. The ride to the penthouse felt like an eternity. Dominic's mind cycled through every contingency, every way the situation could explode. He had known this marriage would create complications, that her family would become his responsibility. But to know it as a concept and to face the raw reality of a child almost being stolen were two different things. When he entered the apartment, Saraphina was pacing like a caged panther. She turned on him the moment he came through the door. Is Emma safe? They said she's safe, but I have to hear her for myself. She's fine, at your parents' house with more men. She doesn't even realize what happened. What do you mean she doesn't realize? Someone tried to take her. Our man stopped them before she registered it. To her, some new guards are just walking her home now, that's it. Saraphina stopped her pacing. Guards? 10-year-olds do not have guards. This one does now. And your other sister as well. This is not real. She pressed her hands to her temples. This is my fault. I did this to them. No. Your father did this when he cut deals he couldn't honor, when he used you as collateral for his failures and made your sisters into leverage. Dominic stepped closer, but maintained his distance. This is not on you, but it is happening because of me, because they want to hurt you, and they are using my family as the weapon. Yes, and I will see to it that it is the last time. She looked at him, fear and rage warring in her eyes. How? By killing more men? By starting a war that will endanger even more innocent people? By making it clear that certain lines must not be crossed? And you are the one who draws the lines? In this world, yes, I am. Saraphina crossed to the window, wrapping her arms around her waist. I want to see them, not yet. Not until I am certain it is safe. And when will that be? When I have dealt with Marco Colombo. Dealt with? She turned back to him. You mean killed? Say the word. You are going to kill him. If that is what is necessary, and if his death makes it worse, if his men retaliate, if other children are put at risk, they won't be. Not after I am through. You cannot possibly know that. I know how power functions. I know that strength is the only language that men like Marco respect. Any hesitation now is weakness. Show them you can be broken through your family and it declares open season. Every adversary I possess will see a path to me through the people you hold dear. Saraphina was still for a long, heavy moment. I despise that you are right. I know. I despise that this brutality is the only resolution. that we cannot simply resolve this like rational human beings. Marco abandoned reason when he sent an assassin after a child, as did you. The instant you took that first life, the moment you chose power over principle. She raised a hand as he began to protest. I am not defending Marco. I am saying you both function in a world where children are considered collateral damage, where terror is leverage and violence is the only meaningful negotiation, and I am caught in the crossfire. Then what is it you want from me? To let this go? And wait for them to finally succeed in taking Emma next time? No, I need you to. She paused, overcome with frustration. I don't know what I want. I want my sisters to be safe. I want to stop being afraid every single second of the day. I want a world where 10-year-olds don't require armed protection. But that isn't the reality we inhabit, is it? No. So do what you must. Shield them. Shield me. Wield whatever violence you deem necessary. Her voice turned hollow. Just do not expect me to pretend it doesn't make me ill. Dominic's phone rang. Victor, we have Marco. He is demanding to speak. I will be there in 20 minutes. He insists on a face-to-face meeting. Neutral territory. Only you and him. That is a trap. Likely, but he is offering intelligence. Claims there is something vital you should know before you ignite a war. Dominic considered. Arrange it. But I want surveillance on everything. If he makes a single suspicious move, we finish it. He ended the call. Saraphina was observing him. You are actually going to meet him? Yes. Is that wise? Probably not, but I must hear what he has to say. You mean you need to look him in the eye as you decide whether to execute him? She understood him too well already. Yes. In that case, I am coming with you. Absolutely not. Why not? Because it is hazardous. Every part of this life is hazardous. If I am present, at least I can witness it myself instead of staying here, imagining far worse. Saraphina, this is not a request. I am informing you that I am coming. You want me to comprehend your world? Then allow me to see it. All of it. Not just the portions you deem me capable of handling. Dominic wanted to protest, to secure her in the penthouse where she would be safe. But the conviction in her eyes told him she would find a way to follow regardless. And perhaps she was right. Perhaps she had to witness the depravity firsthand to grasp why he did the things he did. Fine, but you remain in the car with Victor. You do not exit, you do not intervene, you only observe. Agreed. The meeting was arranged at a warehouse in Queens, industrial and desolate. Dominic showed up with Victor and 2 other security men, with Saraphina in the rear of the sport utility vehicle. Marco was waiting, leaning on a black sedan, flanked by 3 of his own men. Stay put, Dominic instructed Saraphina, regardless of what unfolds. I will. He emerged from the vehicle. Marco tracked his approach, his expression a mask. Varlli, thank you for coming. You have 5 minutes to explain why I shouldn't conclude this right here. Because I was not the one who targeted your wife's sister. That brought Dominic to a dead stop. You are lying? Am I? Consider it. What could I possibly gain by escalating a conflict with you? You seized the shipping lanes? Yes, I am angry about it, but I am not foolish enough to start a war over a territory that was barely turning a profit for me. Then who was behind the photograph? Who sent Danny to tail Saraphina? Danny was on my payroll, but he was also reporting to someone else. Someone who needed you to believe I was responsible for this. Someone who wanted us to annihilate each other so they could seize both of our empires. Dominic felt the pieces rearranging in his mind. Who? Your new father-in-law. The words landed like a physical blow. Aldo, he has been manipulating both sides. He struck a deal with me months ago. I would create disturbances for you, make you appear weak, and he would grant me access to shipping lanes after you assumed control. He said his daughter would assist from the inside. Saraphina knows nothing of this. I suspect she does not. But Aldo calculated that once you were contending with outside pressures, once your marriage crumbled because you failed to protect her family, the entire pact would dissolve. He could nullify the contract, reclaim his authority, and I would be in position to take your territory while you were preoccupied. Dominic's hands clenched into tight fists. You have evidence? Marco retrieved his phone, displaying a thread of text messages, coordinates, and meeting schedules, all meticulously planned, all originating from Aldo's secure number. He dispatched Danny to capture that photo, instructing him to make it appear like my doing. Then he orchestrated the abduction attempt on the girl to force you into a war with me. Marco's smile was glacial. The man was willing to risk his own daughter getting caught in the crossfire just to escape from your influence. That is a cold move, even by our measure. Dominic felt a rage building inside him, white-hot and precise. Why are you disclosing this to me? Because I do not appreciate being a pawn, and because Aldo Val is the type of snake who tarnishes our entire world. He needs to be taught about consequences. Marco put his phone away. I am not suggesting we are allies. We are not. But we do not have to be adversaries either. Not over this. What is it you want? I want Aldo handled for good. And I want a minor stake in the shipping routes. Just enough to call a truce. Dominic weighed his options. Every instinct screamed it was a setup, that Marco was playing him. Yet the proof was right there. The logic was sound, and it made a dreadful kind of sense. Aldo was precisely the sort of coward to endanger his own children for self-preservation. I will consider it. Do not take too long. Aldo has other plans in motion. The next time, it might not be a mere attempt. The next time, one of those children could actually vanish. Dominic pivoted and walked back to the sport utility vehicle. Saraphina was watching from behind the tinted window, her face ashen. He got in beside her. Drive! Victor pulled away. They were 3 blocks down the road before Saraphina spoke. What did he tell you? Dominic took out his own phone, navigated to his contacts, and located Aldo's number. Your father has been manipulating both of us, engineering attacks on you and your sisters to provoke a war between me and Marco, trying to shatter our marriage so he can reclaim his territory. No, he would not. He could not. Dominic showed her the screen captures Marco had forwarded, watching her expression as she read her father's own words, each message more damning than the one before. Oh my God. Her voice fractured. He was willing to let Emma be taken, to let something happen to her, just to get rid of me, to void the agreement. But Emma, Sophie, his own daughters. Saraphina's hands were trembling. What kind of monster gambles with his own children? The kind who sees them only as property, as tools to be used? Dominic reclaimed the phone. I am sorry. Do not apologize for revealing his true nature to me. I should have seen it sooner. I should have understood when he sold me that his other daughters were not precious to him either, that none of us were ever truly people in his eyes. What do you want me to do? She gazed at him, and in her eyes, Dominic saw something he had never witnessed there before. Not fear, not surrender, but something harder, colder. I want you to protect my sisters. truly protect them. Not from outside dangers, from him, from our father. That would mean removing him from the situation entirely. I know what it means. Her voice was steady. He will continue to use us. He will continue to endanger us. As long as he is alive and cornered, Emma and Sophie will never be secure. Saraphina, you are asking me to... I am asking you to do what you excel at. Eliminate a threat. She held his gaze. I am asking you to kill my father. The words hung in the space between them, stark and absolute. Dominic scanned her face for any sign of doubt, for the girl who had flinched from his touch just 2 weeks prior. But that girl was gone. In her stead stood someone who had been pushed beyond her limits, who had learned too fast how little sanctuary family offered when the family itself was poison. Are you certain? He tried to have Emma abducted. He has been orchestrating attacks against me. He sold me and then tried to ruin the one thing of value that came from it. You, trying to be a good man? Her jaw was set. I am certain, after this is done, there is no turning back. You can never erase the knowledge that your husband killed your father. I can already never erase the knowledge that my father tried to harm his own daughters. This simply evens the score. Dominic took out his phone and sent a message to Victor. It will be made to look like an accident, a heart failure. Nothing that can be traced to you or your sisters. I do not care how it looks. I just want them safe. The vehicle arrived at the penthouse. They ascended in the elevator in silence, the weight of their agreement pressing down like stone. Once they were inside, Saraphina went directly to the window and stared out at the city. I am a horrible person. Her voice was a murmur. I just ordered the death of my father, and I feel no remorse. You are not horrible. You are safeguarding the people you love. By becoming like you, by accepting violence as the answer. You are nothing like me. Am I not? I just performed the exact same calculation you perform every day. Assessing lives, determining who is worthy of life and who is not, using force to fix problems. She turned to face him. The only difference is that you are experienced. The difference is I chose this life. You were dragged into it. Does that truly make a difference? The outcome is the same. My father is going to die because I said so. It was because I'd weighed his life against the safety of my sister and found it wanting. Dominic shifted to her side, a careful space between them. If you're waiting for my regret, you won't find it. That is the ugly truth of me. I have no desire to change my mind. I want him erased. I need my sister safe. She faltered. I need this constant fear to end. And if that brands me a monster, then that is what I have become. You aren't a monster. You're a survivor. Is that the story you tell yourself when you take a life? When you inflict pain and shatter worlds with your choices? Are you just surviving? Sometimes. Other times I am simply what I have always been. A monster. Yes. She faced him then, and for the first time in 2 weeks, she closed the chasm between them. She stood so near he could feel the warmth from her skin, see the flecks of gold in her umber eyes. I do not believe you are a monster. You should. I know. But I do not. You have had every chance to harm me, but you never have. You shielded my sisters, even when it threw your own life into chaos. You fight to be better against every instinct you have ever known. Her hand rose slowly, offering him the chance to pull away, and then rested on his cheek. I think perhaps you are just a man who was never given the choice to be anything else. Dominic remained perfectly still. her warmth a brand against his jaw. It was the first time her touch was a choice, free from fear or duty. The first time she had chosen closeness over the safety of distance. Saraphina, I am still afraid of you. A part of me always will be. But I'm beginning to understand, beginning to see how the monstrous parts and the human parts are woven together. That you can be both savage and gentle, a danger and a protector. That perhaps no one is only one thing. What changed your mind? I realized my father was a greater evil than you. That the man who raised me, who was meant to be my shield, would have sold his own children for wealth and influence, while you, the man I was raised to fear, showed me more kindness in 2 weeks than he did in 22 years. Her hand fell from his face. It altered my definition of a monster. Dominic's phone vibrated, a quiet harbinger. Victor, with the news. It's done. Vale's vehicle left the road on his way home, met a concrete barrier. He was gone on impact. Clean, as you requested. Dominic absorbed the text, the finality of it sinking into his bones like lead. He had taken lives before. He had ordered them, delivered them himself, and never lost a moment's sleep. But this felt different. This was Saraphina's father, as vile as he was. A threshold had been crossed, one from which there was no return. He held the phone out to her, watched her eyes scan the words, watched her process the truth that her father was no more, and her choice had been the instrument of his end. There were no tears. For a long moment, there was nothing. Then a single, sharp nod. Good. How do we tell my sisters? Your mother will see to it. She will call you tomorrow. The world will see it as a tragedy, an accident, nothing more. And the funeral? You will go. You will act the part of the grieving daughter. We must keep up appearances. Appearances? A humorless laugh escaped her. My entire existence has been an appearance. To seem beautiful, to seem thankful, to seem fine as my world was collapsing. I am done with appearances. What would you prefer? The truth, no matter how hideous, no matter how much it burns. She sank heavily onto the sofa. My father was a vile man who treated his children like currency. He died because he threatened forces he could not control and believed his manipulations were foolproof. That is the truth, and I will not perform grief for him. Dominic took a seat opposite her. They were in uncharted territory now. Your sisters will mourn him. They are young. They never knew his true nature. Allow them their sorrow. Let them remember the father they believed they had. Saraphina met his gaze. But between you and I, let us be honest. He was a monster too. Just a different breed from you. And what breed am I? The kind that does not lie to himself about what he is. You don't wrap your monstrous deeds in the flag of nobility. You are honest in your cruelty. He called his family duty. She hugged her knees to her chest. I find I prefer your kind. Silence settled between them as the sunset bled across the room in tones of amber and shadow. Beyond the glass, the city carried on, unaware of one man's death, of a young woman's hardening, of a strange marriage born of a transaction, slowly evolving into something like understanding. I ought to feel worse about this, Saraphina murmured at last. I should be weeping or raging, but all I feel is relief. Is that wrong? I don't know. I'm not the man to ask about right and wrong. Perhaps they don't exist. Perhaps there is only survival and the choices we make to see the next day. That is a grim way to see the world. I am the wife of a crime lord who just had my father killed at my request. Grim feels fitting. A faint smile touched Dominic's lips. You have a dark sense of humor. It seems I must to survive in your world. Our world, she corrected. I always say your world, but it is mine now too. For better or for worse, there are those vows again. Yes, those vows. She rose and walked to the window again. Do you believe we can ever figure this out? How to be husband and wife without all of this? In truth, no. I believe all of this is the point. We are from two different worlds, but perhaps we can learn to navigate the chaos together. That doesn't sound very romantic. Our story did not begin with romance. Why would we start lying now? She turned back to him, her expression holding a new softness. Do you know the most peculiar part of this? I am starting to feel safe with you, not in spite of the violence, but because of it. I know you would do anything to protect me, even monstrous things, especially monstrous things. That isn't safety, Saraphina. That is simply standing on the correct side of a dangerous man. Perhaps that is all safety ever is in this life. Being important enough to be guarded, being cared for enough that someone will be a monster for your sake. She returned to the couch, sitting nearer to him this time, not touching, but the space had shrunk. Thank you for shielding my sisters, for handling my father, for trying to make this survivable. You're thanking me for ending your father's life. I am thanking you for honoring your word. There is a distinction. Dominic watched her, this girl who was learning to walk through darkness with the resolve she once might have used to teach children, finding her strength in a world meant to shatter her. She met his eyes, saw the monster in the man, and refused to flee from either. You are stronger than I ever realized. I am just now discovering that. When you cease being terrified of everything, you learn you are capable of more than you ever imagined, even of terrible things, even of survival, no matter the cost. She leaned into the cushions. My father always told me I was weak, too fragile, too emotional, too foolish. I believe he was mistaken. He was entirely mistaken. Or perhaps this strength is only surfacing because it must, because this life demands it, because you taught me that to survive is to make the impossible choice. She studied him. Is that what happened to you? Were you once someone else before violence remade you? I began as someone afraid and weak. Violence gave me strength, and once I had it, I vowed never to be weak again. And now I'm still strong, still dangerous. But for the first time, I find myself asking if that is all I wish to be. What else could you be? Dominic had no answer. He had never entertained an alternative, never conceived of a life outside of building an empire, of wielding fear, of the endless calculus of power. But sitting here with Saraphina, witnessing her transform from a victim into someone harder, more resilient, he felt the first tremor of a new possibility, that he could be one who protects without razing everything to the ground, one who used power for more than just its own sake, one who might one day be worthy of the tentative trust he saw blooming in her eyes. I do not know yet, he answered finally, but I am willing to find out. She reached for him slowly, just as she had before, and her hand closed around his. The act was so simple, yet it felt enormous, the first time she had initiated contact that was not born of fear. Then let us find out together. Two terrible people attempting to be slightly less so. That has to mean something. Dominic glanced down at their joined hands, at the stark contrast between her smooth skin and his scarred knuckles, her fragile trust and his violent past. None of this should work. It was an impossible equation, and yet Somehow, it was beginning to solve itself. The funeral was precisely what Aldo would have desired: lavish, theatrical, crowded with people who had despised him but attended out of obligation. Saraphina stood flanked by her mother and Dominic, clad in black and a mask of suitable grief, playing a role with the same proficiency she once used to survive her father's home. Emma and Sophie wept against their mother, their grief genuine and raw, and the sight of their tears caused something sharp to twist deep within Saraphina's chest. It wasn't guilt that settled in her soul. What she'd done carried no regret. It was the ache of losing a father she had once believed in, a phantom who had never really been there. "Are you all right?" Dominic's voice was a low murmur, meant only for her. "I'm fine, just ready for this all to end." After the service, Marcus offered condolences that felt almost sincere. "Your father was a complicated man." "That's one way to put it," Seraphina replied, seeing no reason to pretend. Not for Marcus, who understood precisely what Aldo was. "For what it's worth, you're bearing this better than most." "I've had a lifetime of practice pretending while my world burned down. This is just one more performance." A new appreciation flickered in Marcus's eyes. "You're stronger than you appear." "I'm being taught to be." Her gaze drifted to Dominic. "By very good teachers." After the funeral came the requisite gathering at her mother's home. Catherine gave an Oscar-worthy performance as the bereaved widow, receiving sympathies from guests who saw her charade but played along. Seraphina watched her mother navigate the room, wondering if Catherine had known of Aldo's scheme, if she was an accomplice or merely willfully ignorant. "Seraphina!" Her mother cornered her in the kitchen's quiet. "We must discuss the arrangements. Your father's estate, the business, this house." "What of them?" "Everything is in ruins. The lawyers claim most of his holdings were signed over to your husband, that your marriage contract granted Dominic absolute control." Catherine's composure finally fractured. "We have nothing. The house is leveraged to the hilt, the accounts drained. He left us drowning in debt." Seraphina felt a chilling lack of pity. "He made his bed. You could help. Speak with Dominic. Surely he would." "He would what? Hand you money after what my father tried to orchestrate?" Catherine's face blanched. "What are you saying?" "You truly have no idea." A bitter laugh escaped Seraphina. "Dad was conspiring with Marco Colombo, arranging assaults on me, on Emma, trying to ignite a war to shatter my marriage and reclaim his empire. He was prepared to sacrifice his own children to escape Dominic's shadow." "That's not—" "He wouldn't." "He would, and he did. Dominic has proof." Seraphina stepped closer, her voice ablaze. "So, no. I will not ask my husband for clemency for the family that sold me off, then sought to destroy the only good thing that emerged from it. You're on your own, Mother. Just as you left me alone while you groomed me for use instead of protecting me. I was preparing you for the reality of your marriage. You were training me for compliance, turning me into property that would not dare fight back." Seraphina's tone turned to ice. "Oh, I learned my lessons, just not the ones you intended." "I learned that family is no shield, that duty is another name for sacrifice, and that the only one who will ever truly protect me is the man you taught me to fear." Catherine reached for her. Seraphina recoiled. "Don't. You cast your lot with Dad. You taught me to endure when you should have taught me to fight. Now you will live with it." She turned and walked back to Dominic. He watched her approach, a question in his eyes. "We're leaving." He didn't question it, simply made their apologies and led her to the car. Once inside, Saraphina finally exhaled a breath she'd held for hours. "That grim! My mother wants funds. She wants me to beg you for aid because Dad left them destitute." "What was your answer?" "That she is on her own. I am finished being the answer to their self-made disasters." Dominic was silent for a long moment. "If you wish to provide for your sisters—" "My sisters are minors. They fall under the family protection clauses of our contract. They will be looked after. But my mother, she chose her path. She can walk it alone. You have become hard. I have become a realist. There is a distinction." She watched the city lights smear past the window. "Besides, I was taught by the best." "I'm not certain that's a compliment." "It wasn't an insult. It was a fact." She faced him again. "Can we just go somewhere? Not the penthouse. Anywhere else. Anywhere that is untouched by all of this." "Where?" "I don't care. Somewhere I can breathe." Dominic gave the driver a new destination. They found themselves in a park by the Hudson, a place for normal people with dogs and sunsets. They sat on a bench, the city at their backs, pretending they were merely two people and not the sum of their violent histories. "I keep waiting for the guilt," Saraphina said into the quiet. "About my father, about giving the order, but all I feel is a void, like a piece of me is gone, but I don't know what it was." "That's normal. Grief is a tangled thing, even for someone you despised." "But is it grief? Or just the silence where the pain used to be?" "Perhaps it's both." Dominic draped his arm along the back of the bench, a breath away from her. "When my own father died, the first thing I felt was relief. That his hands could no longer reach me, that I was finally free. But a strange loss followed, not for the man he was, but for the idea of the father he should have been. That's it exactly. I'm not mourning the man I lost. I'm mourning the father I never had." She leaned into the space he'd made, her shoulder brushing his arm. She didn't pull back. "Do you think we're broken, too damaged to ever be normal?" "Normal was never in the cards for us, not with the lives we were given. But could we be, if we wanted it, if we simply abandoned all of this?" "You fantasize about leaving?" Saraphina considered it. "Sometimes. I imagine vanishing, taking new names, finding a place where no one knows us and beginning again. No violence, no schemes, no endless calculus of survival." "That's a fairy tale." "I know, but it's a beautiful one." She looked at him. "Would you do it if you could? If you could just stop being this person and become someone new?" Dominic answered with stark honesty. "I don't know. This is all I have ever been. I have no idea who I would be without it. But lately being with you, I've wondered if there's something more. If power and fear are all there is to want from this life. What else is there? I don't know. Perhaps that is something we must discover together." They sat quietly, watching ships drift on the river as the sun bled across the horizon. A couple with a dog strolled by, laughing. Two ordinary people, oblivious to the predators watching them from a park bench. "I start my classes next week," Saraphina said finally. "My application to NYU is accepted. I'm in their education program." "That's good. It's what you wanted." "It's strange, having wants, having a future not solely defined by survival." She drew her knees to her chest. "A month ago, My only ambition was to make it through the day in one piece. Now I'm making plans for what comes next. It feels foreign. Foreign good or foreign bad? Foreignly hopeful. And that terrifies me. Hope feels like an invitation for this world to take something else away. Not everything is taken. Most things are. People, security, innocence. This life eventually claims it all. Dominic couldn't deny it. He'd lost too much to offer false comfort. So what then? We accept that nothing lasts and stop reaching for better? I don't know. Or maybe we try anyway. Maybe we build, knowing it could all turn to dust. Perhaps that's the only thing anyone can ever do. She met his gaze. Are we building something? Or are we just two people surviving in close quarters? What does it feel like to you? It feels like we are learning one another, learning how to share the same space without mutual destruction, whether that becomes something more. I honestly don't know yet. Fair enough. But I don't hate you any longer. I was sure I would, that I would resent you forever for this. But you are not the monster I was promised. What am I then? Complicated, lethal but not gratuitous, violent but not without reason, capable of awful thing, and also capable of, she faltered. Of what? Of caring, when you don't want to. When it's a liability, you care about my sisters, about me. You hide it behind strategy, behind protecting assets, but it is more than that. Dominic wanted to refute it, to hold on to the distance that had been his armor for 20 years, but the lie was useless. Saraphina saw him too clearly. Yes, it's more than that. Since when? I'm not sure. Sometime between watching you break on our wedding night and watching you condemn your own father. Somewhere in that chasm, you ceased being a contract and became someone I actually gave a damn about. That's hardly romantic. We've already concluded we are not romantic people? No, we're truly not. A smile touched her lips, and for the first time it reached her eyes. But perhaps we are something else, something that works for us, even if no one else would understand. They remained in the park until the sky was bruised purple and the city lights ignited. As they returned to the penthouse, the air felt changed, lighter, as if they had shed some immense weight on that bench by the Hudson. The following weeks found a new rhythm. Saraphina's classes filled the apartment with textbooks and the bright energy of rediscovery. She would return with tales of pedagogy and the small triumphs of the children she tutored who were just starting to read real books. And so Dominic listened, finding himself captured not by matters of business, but by the sight of her, alive with a passion for something. It was this that began to change him. He started returning home earlier, sharing dinner with her, not from duty, but because the cold silence of his office had lost its appeal. He began to ask about her day and truly hear the answer. He'd offer fragments of his own world, the sanitized parts that wouldn't send her running, carefully testing the ground between them. Then one night, nearly 6 weeks after Aldo's funeral, Saraphina appeared in her pajamas, hesitating in the doorway. Could I ask you something strange? He simply said, always. Would it be all right if I just sat with you while you work? I promise not to be a bother. She gave a small shrug. It's too quiet in my room tonight. Yeah, of course. She settled on the office couch with a book as he went over contracts, and they fell into a comfortable quiet, a silence that soothed instead of suffocated. An hour passed before Dominic glanced up and saw that she had fallen asleep. The book rested on her chest, her expression peaceful in a way it never was while she was awake. The right thing to do was wake her, to send her to her own bed. Instead, he found a blanket and gently covered her before returning to his work. Her presence, even in sleep, somehow made the cold room feel less like an office and more like a home. She was still there when morning came, when he woke on the couch across from her, having drifted off himself without ever meaning to. She stirred as he moved, blinking at him, lost for a moment. Morning, morning. As she sat up, the blanket slipped away. You stayed here too? It appears so. Why didn't you go back to your room? He answered quietly. I didn't want to leave you alone. A subtle change crossed her face. That's the kindest thing anyone has ever done for me. Not leaving me alone. That's a terribly low bar. Welcome to my life, she said, but a small smile touched her lips. Thank you. After that, the space between them began to shrink, one small step at a time. Saraphina sitting a little closer at dinner, Dominic's hand resting on the small of her back as they entered a restaurant. These were tiny gestures that would have once made her flinch, but now felt normal. Her laughter, a rare sound, began to answer his dry wit. He found himself absorbed in her stories. It was the slow, careful building of a world for two. But the life they led had no patience for slow things. It always demanded a price. The call arrived on a Tuesday. It was Victor, his voice stretched thin with rage. We have a problem. Someone hit our warehouse in Red Hook. 2 of our men are gone. They made off with $500,000 in product. Within minutes, Dominic was gone. Saraphina stood in the doorway, her eyes filled with a fear he understood all too well. Be careful. I always am. No, she said. You're not. You are reckless. You are violent. And you believe you're invincible. She stepped toward him. But you aren't. So be careful anyway. He wanted to brush it off, to raise the walls that kept him safe, but her gaze held him. I will. The warehouse was a portrait of violence. 2 bodies lay under tarps, the security feeds were erased. The entire affair was clean, professional, far too professional for a simple robbery. Who was responsible? Dominic asked Victor. We don't know yet. But it was precise. They knew the security patterns, the shift changes, the exact location of the product. It had to be an inside job. The only question was who and why. Marcus showed up 15 minutes later, his face grim as he surveyed the damage. This is bad, very bad. We lose this much, word gets out. People will start to see us as weak. Then we find who did this and we make them an example, agreed. But until then, everything gets locked down. Double the security. Rotate all the shifts. Trust no one. For the next 3 days, Dominic hunted. He called on every contact, every source, chasing every whisper in the shadows. And the answer, when it came, was worse than he could have imagined. It was Tommy Ratchie. Victor slid the file across Dominic's desk. Your man. Been with you for 8 years. Tommy. The betrayal struck him with a physical force. Tommy had been steadfast, reliable. He was one of the few men Dominic had genuinely trusted. Are you certain? We have surveillance of him meeting the buyers. He orchestrated the entire thing, took the product, sold it himself, and kept the money. But why? He claims he needed cash. His kid has medical problems, something serious. He came to you for a loan 6 months back. You turned him down. Dominic could vaguely recall it. Tommy's daughter had some rare disease, something requiring an experimental cure. He had looked at the request, deemed it a poor investment, and had told Tommy to handle it himself. So he stole from me. Yes, and he killed 2 of our men in the process. The Dominic of the past would have had Tommy executed on the spot. He would have made it a public, brutal warning against disloyalty, but now something gave him pause. Where is he? We have him, awaiting your orders on how to proceed. Dominic went to see Tommy himself, finding him in a damp basement, bound to a chair, his face a mask of blood and defeat. When Tommy looked up and saw him, something inside the man simply shattered. "Boss, I'm sorry. I am so sorry. I didn't." "You didn't what? Think I would find out? Think you wouldn't have to answer for this? My daughter, she's dying. The treatment was $300,000 and I couldn't get it. I asked you for help. You refused. I didn't know what else to do. So you stole from my house. You killed 2 of my men. And you betrayed my trust. I know I was wrong, but she's my little girl. She's only 8 years old, and I couldn't." Tommy's voice broke with sobs. "I couldn't just stand by and let her die." Dominic felt a sharp crack deep within his own chest. A month ago, he would have ended Tommy's life without a second thought. But now all he could see was Saraphina's face, thinking of her sisters, and the terrible choices people make when cornered by desperation. "You should have come to me again. You should have explained. It was an emergency. I tried 3 times. Your assistant said you were too busy to be bothered." The words landed like a fist to the gut. Tommy had tried. He had run out of options and made the choice of a man with nothing left to lose. The men you killed, they had families. "I know," Tommy whispered, his voice gone. "That will follow me for the rest of my days." But my daughter was fading, and I couldn't see anything else. Dominic took out his phone and made a call. "How much for the treatment Tommy Ricci's daughter needs?" 300,000. Wire the full amount to the hospital today." Tommy just stared, bewildered. "What are you—" "Your daughter will get her medicine, and you will get to live. But you are finished here. You will leave this city. You will start a new life, and you will never return. If you so much as breathe in my direction again, I will finish what I started here tonight. Do you understand?" "I don't." "Why?" "Because I am trying to become someone other than the man I was. Because my wife has shown me that mercy is not always a weakness. Because you are a father who made a terrible choice to save his child. And I cannot punish that without becoming the very monster they all believe me to be." Dominic turned to Victor. "Let him go. Get him and his family out of the city before morning. Boss, just do it." Victor obeyed, but the look on his face said he believed Dominic had finally gone mad. And perhaps he had. In their world, perhaps mercy was just another name for insanity. But Dominic was tired of being a man whose only skill was destruction. When he arrived home that night, Saraphina was waiting. She saw his face and knew instantly that something had broken. "Tell me." And so he did. He told her of Tommy, of the betrayal, and of the choice he had made. She listened, her gaze never leaving his. And when he was done, she crossed the room and wrapped her arms around him. It was the first time she had ever started such a thing. The first time she had offered him comfort instead of simply receiving his protection. For a long moment, Dominic stood perfectly still before slowly, carefully he held her back. "You did the right thing." Her voice was a murmur against his chest. "Did I? I let a traitor who stole from me just walk away? Who murdered my men? That doesn't make me right. It makes me weak." No, she said, it makes you human. It makes you a man who sees that people are not just assets and liabilities, but that they are flawed and desperate and just trying to get by. She pulled away slightly, just enough to look at him. It makes you someone I think I could truly love. Eventually. The word love hung in the air between them, vast and frightening. They had never spoken it. They had never even approached it. Yet there it was, tentative, honest. Eventually, he echoed, his voice raw. I'm not there. Not yet. I'm still learning who you are, still trying to decide if this can be trusted. But I think I could be, someday. If we continue on this path, if you continue being this person and not the one you were raised to be. And what if I fail? What if that man comes back? Then I will face him. But I don't believe he will. I think you are changing. Perhaps not all at once, perhaps not without mistakes, but enough. Enough for me to imagine a future that is more than just trying to survive. Dominic drew her closer again, feeling the tension leave her body. I don't know how to do any of this, he admitted. How to be with someone, how to care for them without seeing it as a weakness. Neither do I. So we learn how together. We'll make mistakes and we'll fix them, and then we'll make new ones. It's what people do. But what if I hurt you, not with my hands, but just with who I am? Then I get hurt, and we will deal with it. But you're already doing better than anyone else in my entire life has. You are trying, and that means more than being perfect. In the center of the room, they simply held one another, two fractured souls discovering how to be whole together. This was no romance, no storybook ending penned for hopeful hearts, but something raw, honest, and forged from a foundation harder than any illusion. The document that began it all lay forgotten in some drawer, its legal terms a ghost of their past. What they were forging now was not born of contracts, but of will, a difficult, tangled, and beautifully flawed choice. In the months that passed, they kept building. Saraphina earned her degree, then her teaching credentials, finding work at the school where she had once volunteered. She would return, drained but glowing, dusted with glitter and marker smudges, to tell Dominic of 6-year-olds who had just conquered their first sentence. As he listened, a pride for her bloomed within him, one entirely separate from any notion of ownership. He began the slow pivot of his enterprise, not abandoning it entirely. He was not so foolish as to believe he could simply leave that life, but he shifted its weight, funneling assets from illicit ventures into legitimate ones, wielding his power as a shield rather than a sword. The process was a slow, bitter struggle against relentless opposition. Yet Victor stood by him, and Marcus helped guide the painstaking transition. Gradually, the empire began to resemble less of a menace and more of a flawed but potent force for good. For a time, when Catherine faltered, they brought Seraphina's sisters to live in penthouse. Emma and Sophie filled the sterile space with vibrant, youthful chaos, and Dominic discovered a surprising fondness for the noise. He found himself drawn into homework, learning the intricacies of middle school drama, and becoming the kind of uncle they so desperately needed. When Catherine finally reached her desolate bottom, inebriated, desperate, and utterly alone, it was Seraphina who offered her mercy. It was not forgiveness, nor was it reconciliation, but it was enough for treatment. It was enough for survival. In their world, that is what mercy was. Not erasure of the past, but a refusal to utterly destroy. A year after their wedding, the marriage contract surfaced for review. The lawyers laid it before Dominic, replete with clauses for renewal and alteration. He gazed at the pages, his mind reeling with all that had transpired since he had first signed them. Then he tore them into pieces. His lawyer stared, aghast. "What are you doing?" The action voided every term, ending the contract. "The shipping lanes, the territorial claims, they are mine with or without her. I don't need a piece of paper to hold what I built." Dominic rose from his chair. "Prepare dissolution papers, a clean break." "You're divorcing her." "I am giving her an option. She was never given one before. She will have one now." He returned home that night, the documents in his briefcase. He found Saraphina at the kitchen table, absorbed in grading school papers. She glanced up as he came in. "You seem grave. Is something wrong?" "Nothing is wrong. But we must speak." He placed the documents on the table. "Our marriage agreement was up for review. I have terminated it." Her face drained of all color. You want to end this?" "No. I am giving you that power. The contract that trapped you in this marriage is gone. You are free to go, if that is your wish. There will be no strings, no repercussions. Your sisters will remain safe. You will be provided for, but you will be free." Saraphina looked at the documents as if they were venomous. "Why are you doing this?" "Because the choice was never yours. Your father sold you into this, and while we have made something better of it, it began without your consent. Now the decision can be yours. You can decide to stay, or you can decide to walk away. Either path you take, it will be your own. And if I go, then you will go. I will not try to stop you. I will not create obstacles. You have earned the right to command your own life." She lifted the papers, her eyes tracing the legal text. Dominic watched her, witnessing the silent war raging behind her gaze as she weighed the freedom he was offering. At last, she set them down. "I'm not signing these, Dominic." Her voice was clear. "I am not signing them because I do not want a divorce. I want to remain here. Not because a document compels me to, but because I am choosing to, because what we have made is important to me, because you are important to me." She rose and walked around the table until she stood before him. "I love you." I can't say precisely when it began. Perhaps it was somewhere between you destroying my father and you sparing Tommy Ritchie. But it is true. I love you, and I choose to remain your wife. Not as a captive, but as a partner. Dominic felt a final wall inside his chest give way, a barrier he hadn't known he was still holding up. "I love you too," he confessed. "I don't know the right way to do this. I will likely fail at it constantly, but I love you more than I ever believed I could love another soul." It was then that she kissed him, truly for the first time. Not the perfunctory gesture from their wedding, but a kiss of profound choice. He returned it with a gentle reverence, holding her as if she were something sacred, not as if she were something he owned. When they finally parted, she was weeping. They were tears of joy this time, not of fear or grief. "So this is what we are doing, truly choosing one another? If you will have me," he said, "knowing I am still a dangerous man, and that some part of me always will be. I am not looking for a saint. I am asking for you, all of you, the broken parts and the parts that are trying to heal. That is all I want. Then that is what you will have." They stood there in the kitchen, encircled by school papers and legal documents that would now go unsigned. Two people whose beginning was a cold transaction had somehow found a way to be real. It was not the story that anyone would have written for them. It held none of the traditional marks of romance, but it was theirs alone. It was chaotic and difficult and built upon a brutal honesty rather than a comforting lie. That evening, for the first time since they were married, Saraphina did not retire to her own bedroom. She took Dominic by the hand and led him to his room, which was now their room. What followed was tender and unhurried, imbued with the deep trust they had spent a year forging. It was not flawless. There were still flickers of her old fear. He still had to consciously temper his nature, but it was real, and it was chosen, and that made it infinitely more valuable than perfection. Later, as she lay in the darkness with her head resting on his chest, Seraphina's voice broke the silence. "Do you ever have regrets about the contract, about how we started?" Dominic considered her question with true honesty. "I regret what it did to you. The terror, the loss of your freedom, everything you endured because of your father. But I cannot regret the path that brought us here, because I would never have found this without it. I never would have found you." "Nor I you," she whispered. "As horrific as it was, I cannot regret it, because it shaped me into someone stronger, someone who knows what she wants and is willing to fight for it. Someone who can love a complicated, dangerous man and not be consumed by him." "Is that what you're doing? Loving a dangerous man?" "That is precisely what I'm doing. And you're loving a woman who has learned how to be dangerous in return. We seem to be good at that, making each other stronger, not weaker." "Yes," he agreed. "We are." They drifted to sleep, entwined in each other's arms. And for the first time since their wedding night, they both slept without disturbance. There were no nightmares, no lingering dread, only the quiet solace of two souls who had chosen each other against all odds. The years that came after were not simple. Dominic's history sometimes caught up to them, old rivals, past debts, the persistent threat that clung to the life he had built, but they confronted it as a unit. Saraphina learned to move through his world with the same resolve she applied to her teaching. He learned to place her well-being and happiness above his own ambition for power. They argued, they reconciled, they argued again. They learned the map of each other's limits and how to speak when words were hard. Emma and Sophie grew up sheltered and cherished, unaware of the full, dark truth of their brother-in-law's profession, or what their own father had intended. They knew only that Saraphina was happy, that Dominic was family, and that they felt a sense of safety they had never known before. Dominic slowly reshaped his empire into something that could nearly pass for legitimate. Not entirely. Some darkness could never be fully cleansed, but it was enough for him to find sleep at night. Enough that when Saraphina looked at him, she saw a man striving for redemption, not one reveling in destruction. On their 5th anniversary, Dominic brought Saraphina to the park where they had sat after her father's funeral. They took a seat on the same bench, watching the river flow by, 5 years older and unrecognizably changed. "Do you recall what we spoke of here?" Saraphina asked. "You asked me if I would ever just leave, begin again somewhere else. And would you?" "No." Dominic paused, considering it. "No, not any longer. This is the life we have. It's tangled and flawed and sometimes perilous, but it is ours. I have no desire to run from it. I want to keep forging it into something better." "Me too." She rested her head on his shoulder, a simple act of comfort she could never have imagined on that first terrifying night. "We did all right, didn't we? For two people who began as a business arrangement. We did more than all right. We built something true from something monstrous. That is not a small thing." "No," she said softly. "It's everything." They remained until the sun had set, just as they had 5 years before. But this time, as they walked away, they were going home together. Not to a cage, but to a life they had made, and to a marriage that had begun in ink, but was now written on their souls. Theirs was not a conclusion from a storybook. There was no sudden miracle, no flawless joy, only two fractured souls discovering how to love one another through the wreckage they had both endured. They took a pact born of terror and obligation and reforged it into a partnership of volition and belief. In a world trading in dominance, brutality, and shattered vows, that single act of recreation was the most profound defiance imaginable. Dominic Varlli had built his existence on the tenet that might was the only reality, compassion a fatal flaw, and attachment a vulnerability. Saraphina Vale had lived a life convinced her existence was worthless beyond her use to others, that to survive was to become invisible, that to love was to bleed. They were both profoundly mistaken, and their convergence had shown them the deepest strength was found in the choice to be unguarded, that clemency demands a greater spirit than cruelty, that authentic love meant truly seeing another. It meant witnessing all their shadowed pieces and all their desperate struggles and choosing them regardless. The marital agreement that began their journey now lies shredded and forgotten. Its influence evaporated. But the marriage itself endures, more formidable because it is wanted than it ever was when it was commanded. And that one choice, remade daily in silent gestures and loud declarations, held more worth than any binding paper ever could.
Life lesson: power means nothing if the person holding it cannot control what it does to the soul. Dominic Varlli thought he was making the easiest deal of his life. He saw shipping routes, family alliances, debt clearance, territorial advantage. He saw numbers, leverage, signatures. He did not see a human being. That was the first mistake, and wow, it was a catastrophic one. Because the moment Saraphina walked into that wedding looking less like a bride and more like a hostage wrapped in white, the whole fantasy of control started cracking. Dominic had spent years building an empire where fear worked like currency. People heard his name and folded. Doors opened, threats disappeared, enemies learned the rules. In his mind, power had always been simple. Whoever scared the room the most owned the room. But here came the plot twist. The one thing he never prepared for was a terrified girl who did not fear him like the others did. The street feared him strategically. Rivals feared him professionally. Business partners feared him because they wanted to survive. But Saraphina feared him existentially. She looked at him like he was the end of her life, not the center of a transaction, and suddenly all that glorious power did not feel glorious anymore. It felt rotten. That is where the first life lesson lands like a punch. A person can win the whole game and still lose himself in the process. Dominic got everything he wanted on paper. He got the marriage, he got the roots, he got the influence, he got the upper hand. But the moment he realized Saraphina had been sold, conditioned, and prepared like property, the victory started tasting like poison. That is the truth a lot of people learn too late. Success without conscience is just decorated failure. A person can own the building, own the contracts, own the city, and still feel like the smallest man in the room if the price of victory is another person's terror. And Saraphina, she is the second plot twist. At first, she looks like the typical tragic heroine, right? Frightened, trapped, sacrificed by her own family. But the deeper lesson in her story is not weakness. It is adaptation. It is moral awakening under pressure. She begins as someone taught to endure everything quietly. Be good, be useful, be obedient, be small. That kind of conditioning destroys people long before violence ever touches them. But pain has a weird side effect. Sometimes it breaks a person, other times it introduces that person to a version of strength nobody expected. Saraphina learns the ugliest lesson possible. The people who say family are not always the people who mean protection. Her father uses duty as a weapon. Her mother disguises compliance as virtue. The home that should have defended her becomes the place that bargains her away. And when that illusion dies, something else is born. Not innocence. That is gone. Not peace. Definitely not peace. What is born is clarity. And clarity changes everything. She stops confusing sacrifice with love. She stops confusing obedience with goodness. She stops believing that suffering in silence makes someone noble. That is a massive life lesson right there. Endurance is not always virtue. Sometimes endurance is just trained helplessness wearing a halo. Then comes the biggest revenge twist of all. Dominic, the so-called monster, starts acting more human than the parents who raised her. Meanwhile, Saraphina, the supposed innocent, becomes capable of making brutal choices to protect her sisters. That is why the story hits so hard. It destroys the cartoon morality people love. The villain protects, the father betrays, the victim becomes dangerous. The marriage contract turns into a battlefield of choice, dignity, and slowly earned trust. And that leads to the most powerful lesson in this whole chaos. People are not defined by the role they enter a story with. They are defined by what they choose when they finally see the truth. Dominic sees the truth and chooses restraint over entitlement. Saraphina sees the truth and chooses agency over obedience. Neither choice is clean, neither choice is pretty. This is not some fairy tale where love fixes everything in one montage and everybody suddenly becomes emotionally healthy. No, this story understands something brutally realistic. Healing often begins ugly. Sometimes it starts with boundaries, sometimes with anger, sometimes with breaking a plate in the kitchen because years of swallowed humiliation finally need a sound. And for YouTube audiences, that is exactly why this kind of story retains attention so hard. It is not just romance. It is not just mafia drama. It is a non-stop collision between power and conscience, trauma and choice, revenge and mercy. Every twist forces the same question. What happens when a person gets everything he wanted and realizes what he wanted was never the real prize? The answer is savage. Dominic learns that protecting someone is harder than owning them. Saraphina learns that choosing herself is harder than sacrificing herself. Both of them learn that love is not proven by possession, fear, or duty. It is proven by whether a person can hold power and refuse to abuse it. That is the final lesson. The strongest person in the room is not always the one who can destroy. Sometimes it is the one who can stop destroying when destruction would be easy, and in a world built on revenge, that might be the most shocking plot twist of all.